Welcome to the June 1st meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District School Board. Superintendent, will you take the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Hui.
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse. Here. Mr. Reed.
Here.
And please note for the record that Ms. Larrett is not here tonight.
All right. We will be going into closed session on the following matters. Student matters, specifically expulsion recommendation, case number 2223-5S, and expulsion recommendation, case number 223-6S. Also, employer-employee relation matters, conference with legal counsel regarding litigation, conference with real property negotiators, and personnel matters. Is there any public comment on the closed session items before we go into closed session? Anybody online? No. Okay. So we will be going into closed session. We will be returning at 6 o'clock sharp for the open session portion of the meeting. So we will stand in recess until 6. Welcome to the June 1st meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District School Board. If you would all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's see. Broadcast statement. A broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board Policy 1313 promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among employees, parents, and the public. We will treat staff, parents, and members of the public with respect and expect the same in return. If any member of the public uses obscenities or communicates in a demanding, loud, insulting, and/or demeaning manner, the board will calmly and politely admonish the person to communicate civilly. Public comment during board meetings are an important component of public engagement and transparency. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their speaking time to another member of the public. All written comments submitted by 3 p.m. today to the board have been read. Per the Brown Act, the board is not allowed to enter into a two-way discussion on any matter that is not on the agenda. With that, Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Ms. Perez.
Here.
Ms. Srivastava.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Hui.
Here.
Ms. Larrett. Please note for the record, Ms. Larrett is absent. Ms. Lofthouse.
Here.
And Mr. Reed.
Here.
All are accounted for except for the one absence.
Thank you. Agenda item 5, reporting out of closed session. Superintendent.
We have no action to report out of closed session tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. Let's see. Adoption of agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Board Member Clark. Is there
I'll
a
second.
Second by Board Member Perez. Superintendent, will you take the roll, please?
Ms. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Hui.
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Aye.
Mr. Reed.
Aye.
And Ms. Larrett is absent. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you.
All right. Item number 7, special presentations. We're starting with students. First one is recognition of spring sports teams and coaches. Superintendent.
Yes, it's our honor and privilege to introduce those students and their families and our coaches who are part of the spring athletic season of sport. So we're honoring those student athletes in the areas of baseball, softball, track and field, golf, boys volleyball, lacrosse, and stunt cheer. And I'm going to invite Mr. Maroon to come to the podium to give us more of the specifics on these championships and all league athletes. And as he's coming up, I want to thank our coaches for their numerous hours of dedication to coaching our teams, and then to the families who are the ones that are getting our students to and from practices and supporting our students at their events. With that, Mr. Maroon, take it away.
Good evening, President Reed, Superintendent Collegian, and board members. Can you tell it's summer? Our students are enjoying our vacation, and well-deserved vacation. Tonight, we're going to recognize some 70 of our student athletes, and I think we have one. So I'm glad we're not counting this for attendance, which is a good thing. But some information to share with you that I thought would be great was one of it is our Sutter Middle School this year had 300 kids participating in track and field. And those 300 kids kind of dominated, if you can imagine, the other middle schools. So with that, their track and field team won the Foothill Athletic League Championship. Their 8th grade girls and 6th grade girls, as well as their 6th grade boys, won all their divisions. Their 8th grade boys and 7th grade girls and 7th grade boys also were runner-ups. So with their total points based on their events, the school obviously won their league. With that, 300 kids participated, and Coach Jill Sargento is not here, but her assistants, they did a phenomenal job this year, if nothing else, just maintaining all 300 kids and not losing them somewhere. So if we can give a round of applause to Sutter Middle School, that'd be great. And Principal McFall is here with us, so we can share this with him. All right, next up was Cordova High School. Their baseball team won the Greater Sacramento League, the championships this year. This is participated in the D2 playoffs as well. I believe this is the second time in a row that they won that league, so that's congratulations to the baseball team. And I have, I believe, our assistant principal, Brown here. If you can come up and receive that certificate, it'd be great. While she is here, their softball team also won the Greater Sacramento League champs, competed in the section champion or playoffs, and qualified for the quarterfinals, losing by 1 point. They had a phenomenal season. They had a number of athletes. 4 of their athletes signed scholarships this year. So great job for the softball team. Their boys golf team had one individual, Stephen Nefsky, took 3rd place in the D4 Masters, which is phenomenal. That program is up and coming, and they've done a terrific job. So congratulations to Stephen. He was all league as well. And then their track and field team won the Great Sacramento League Championship as well. So with that, we have baseball, softball, and track and field for Cordova High School. Vista del Lago boys lacrosse team won the Delta League Championship. You might ask, why Delta League? Why not the Capital Athletic League? Because there isn't enough lacrosse teams in the Northern California area, so they compete in one league from Northern California, and they compete against teams out of the North Coast section. So our boys lacrosse team won the Delta League and then competed in the playoffs in the North Coast section. And also they had their coach was named the Coach of the Year from the league this year as well, Coach Methersmith. So I'm going to ask Ms. Moore to come up. In addition, we had our Vista del Lago girls varsity softball team, which was almost as close as Cordova's softball team in competition. Really thought they were going to pull out, but they faced a real tough Pondo team that knocked them off, and Pondo's advanced now to the NorCal. So congratulations to the girls varsity softball team for winning the Capital Athletic League champs. And the varsity boys tennis team not only won the Capital Athletic League championship, but they also won the Sac Joaquin Section Division III championship, which I believe is the first time for the school. So congratulations for that one as well. So there are a few individuals here I want to recognize from Folsom High, and then I'm just going to basically give these certificates to the schools to hand out to the students. Probably going to have to mail it to them over the summer, for some of these kids who graduated already. And I'm going to share some fun facts with you. With that, I'm going to ask Brian, Paul, come on up. Folsom High's golf players that made the All-League. We had 2 of them. Which one's he?
He made playoffs.
Oh, he made playoffs, got it, okay. You had 2 individuals that made the All-League this year from Folsom High School, and that was Akira Ranci and Michael Sober. Both of them are All-League athletes from the Sierra Foothill League. You're going to tell me that again? Oh, in Division I Masters. Okay. And we have Frank Chan, who made the division playoffs this year for boys golf. So congratulations to you as well. And Ms. Finley, if you can come up and receive the rest of these certificates. Folsom High had a total of 20 all-league players this year for the spring sports.
And thank you.
Sure.
Our other coach. Can I just say our other coach that's here is Robert Raffaelli. Let's see if I can pronounce it right. After all these years, I should know. But he has grown our boys volleyball team from not even having a team one year to 2 teams to 3 teams. Still even has to cut people beyond that with all 3 teams. They made it all the way for this year. They went to playoffs before with him, and this year they made it all the way to the section semifinals and did a fantastic job and had kids that made all league and on and on. And he also was chosen for the 2nd year in a row as I'm sorry, I don't remember if it's North or South Optimist. Yes,
Optimist.
Yeah, South Optimist coach, the head coach for that. And that's a huge honor. There's even team like Jesuit finished above us, had a phenomenal volleyball team, but he got chosen as the coach 2 years in a row. So just want to give him kudos. So thank you. Thank you guys again for doing this. Thank you very much. And thank you, Peter.
Ms. Brown, I'm going to call you back up to get your certificates for your athletes as well. We had, like I said, a phenomenal softball year this year. Mariah Hopkins was the player of the year for their Greater Sacramento League, so just want to recognize her. In addition to that, there's 5 other athletes, including Stephen for golf. And Miss Moore, I only have 64 of these certificates. All league for all your athletes. I know you guys love data. So this year we have honored 219 all-league, MVP, and all-metro athletes, as well as 6 Coach of the Years for the school district since the beginning of the year. This is phenomenal. In addition, we had 41 seniors commit to colleges across the country, estimated around $1.4 million for 4 years. That's a total of $5,740,000 for our families this year going to college. So athletics, which takes up less than 1% of all of our budget, has saved our families almost $6 million in the next 4 years for athletics, just in 1 year alone. Thank you guys for your support.
Did we want to take a picture? We do have our one athlete and the
Yeah,
representatives.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's bring everybody up.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if the administrators were also up. And our coaches, yes, please.
I guess I am here as the admin.
Poor Frank.
And then I'm gonna get off mic for just a moment. Oh, all right. Everybody look over here. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. Hold for the camera. Anybody else want to take a picture? Okay. Sometimes we have parents. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
All right, let's see, the second item under students is Model Professional Learning Community Recognition, Vista Del Lago High School.
This is another exciting recognition tonight for Folsom Cordova and for Vista Del Lago High School. This is a first in that we have a school that's been recognized as a model professional learning community school. There are only 6 that have been recognized in the state of California, and our Vista Del Lago is one of those. And we're very honored to share this recognition, but also to invite Jessica Rogers from Solution Tree to make this presentation. So welcome, Jessica. And I also want to welcome Dr. Moore and our team from Vista Del Lago, because a PLC is a team approach and it takes everybody's working together towards a common goal to achieve this title of distinction. So with that, Ms. Rogers.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It's so great to be here. Recognizing a school that has accomplished some amazing things. And I just have a few words I want to share. I'm Jessica Rogers. I'm the Executive Director for Solution Tree's California State Office. I did bring my team with me. Eric Henry, he's our Director of Educational Partnerships, and Courtney Andrews, our Market Development Coordinator. And today we're here to talk about Kim and her team at Vista Del Lago. Vista Del Lago and their commitment to educational excellence and dedication to the principles of a PLC have earned them a prestigious recognition and Model PLC at Work school. As a Model PLC, Vista Del Lago has exemplified what it means to be a collaborative and learning-focused institution where students' success and growth are the center of their efforts. The journey to becoming a Model PLC school is not an easy one. It requires a shared vision, a commitment to continuous improvement, and a deep belief in the power of collaboration. Vista Del Lago has embraced these principles wholeheartedly, and the results speak for themselves. I mean, did you see the stack of certificates for those athletes? I mean, that's just one piece of it. The entire staff at Vista Del Lago, which we do have a few here, thank you for being here during your summer. They have embraced a growth mindset, constantly seeking out opportunities for professional development and engaging in meaningful collaboration with our colleagues. They have worked together to analyze data, develop targeted instructional strategies, and implement interventions to meet the unique needs of their students. Through their dedication, they have created a supportive and enriching learning environment that fosters student success. Today, we celebrate not only the Model PLC Award, but also the collective effort of every individual within the school community, parents, students, and staff included. This recognition is a testament to the extraordinary work that has been done and the transformative impact it has had on the lives of students. So on behalf of Solution Tree, I extend my warmest congratulations to Vista Del Lago High School, to Kim Moore and her team for this well-deserved recognition. And I'd like to give Kim an opportunity to speak and say a few words about her team.
That's my thing. Thank you so much for this recognition. This has been close to a decade in the making for us at Vista. Lori, when she was principal and I was assistant principal, really wanted to apply for this, and the pandemic kind of derailed us, but last year our team came together, set some goals at the beginning of the year, and we said by March we're going to apply, and we did it. And this is just a huge testament to our entire team, staff, the teaching staff, the leadership at Vista previously and currently has been committed to this process. And I think our students' families benefit, and that's evident. And thank you to the board and to the district for all of their support over the years, because we can't do it alone. So yeah, thank you. And this journey is not over for us. We're just going to continue on and keep on improving. So thank you for the recognition.
And we do have a certificate and a flag that we would love to get a picture with the board, if that's all right.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Rogers, and we'll come down there in just a moment to take a picture. Also, on behalf of our Board of Trustees, we'd also like to honor and recognize Vista Del Lago with a certificate in honor of your national recognition by Solution Tree as a Model Professional Learning Community PLC school. So congratulations, Dr. Moore, and to your whole team. All right.
So not only will they have a certificate, but they will have a flag to fly at their school to brag about their recognition. So I will let Kim and team hold the flag.
Hold the flag.
Yeah.
Okay, Tracy, you gotta
I
come.
think we're gonna have lots of cell phones for pictures to be taken. And team, I want you to be in this picture. If you'd like.
This is a big flag. That's a wonderful flag. That's a big flag. I know. Hey, staff, maybe y'all get behind the flag. You're setting an example.
That looks great. Yeah.
Is it working?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you can get on in here too.
All
This
right,
looks
fantastic.
great. Do I say cheese, cheese? Let me get some on this phone too. Yay. Okay, sorry, I'll make room.
No. This is what it's all about. All right, everybody. Okay, I like to say PLC. Yeah, I love it. Okay, and got another camera here. One minute. Okay, all right. Now, here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, we're going to get a good picture out of all that. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Well, that was a nice honor. Congratulations, Vista Del Lago. All right, it looks like we do not have a staff presentation for tonight. So that takes us to agenda item 8, public comment. I don't think I saw any cards. Is there anybody here who's wishing to speak on a public comment? All right, is there anybody online? All right, how about that? All right, that takes us to agenda item 9, which is report of district organizations. And we'll start with the Student Advisory Board.
We have no report tonight because SAB is adjourned. Thank you.
All right. And next, we have the California School Employees Association. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here in place of Rob Korn. He got sick this afternoon, so he didn't make it. My name is Omera Johnson, and I've been involved in different positions with CSEA for the last 31 years. I would like to take at this time, this is a personal side note, to thank the district for a 31-year career. My teachers, my students, my staff, and my classified personnel have been fantastic. I love them, and I'm going to miss them all. That being said, and trying my hardest not to cry and not to push blame, but I feel you need to hear how how you are not making the grade. Employee safety is at sites, not people from coming on campus, but our own students, grades K through 12. We're still getting hurt. We're still taking the brunt. Staff bullying. Our own staff, bullying staff. And they're afraid to say anything because if nothing's done, you have to live with that bully. You have to live with that bully. Restorative justice, we hear it a lot, but we don't hear it for our staff. Teachers, principals, classified, we don't hear restorative justice. And restorative justice only works if the person is willing to change. I'm sorry, that's fact. Principals, teachers, classified are being asked to do more with the same amount of time and no increase in pay. The same. District makes policies and they want us to instill programs, and we're the miracle workers, teachers, classified, principals are the ones that get this done. And still feeling underappreciated. Longevity of staff. We just did of new staff. We just did a little study, not anything particularly hard, but our new staff that we're trying to bring in and keep on, 10 years is their max, and they're gone. Why? Why? Why are they gone? Well, I have maybe a little bit of a solution. You have job fairs. And I told this to Sarah the other day. You have job fairs. You're looking for employees. No, you're not. You're looking for career-minded people like myself, like everyone that's been here for longer than 20 years. So why not start calling it a career fair with team members? You want people to feel good? You want them to feel like they're joining a family? We're a team. All campus members, all people who deal with children, bus drivers, campus monitors, people in the office, our nurses, we all need to be trained in de-escalation. We've asked and asked and asked. We need this. We don't want our babies, and I'm sorry, they're our babies, to get hurt. We don't want them to see them have the behaviors they have. We want to be there to help. We want to be the soft place for them to fall. And I don't see that happening. My de-escalation training is mom and grandma. That's it. That's it. Our yard duties are being asked now to do more. To do more. And most of them only work an hour a day. They're not in our unit, I'm sorry, they're not. But they're asking them to become eyes and ears on campus. Great, we want to keep our babies safe. But an hour a day makes a good employee and makes them feel like they're a team member? No. And board members, I'm sorry to direct this to you, but I have to. Every one of you are doing a job that my tax dollar pays you for. And I never see you at a school site. You can't take 2 days out of a month to visit schools in Folsom and then come visit us in Rancho? You can't? That's a shame. I hope you feel bad about that, because we have some wonderful students, as you saw here tonight, but it would be nice for them to see you. Show up, turn up, be there for our students. Principals, classified staff, teachers, we're there in the trenches. And if you could just come and spend 2 days doing our jobs and see what it's like and feel the pain of watching our little ones. And I say little ones, but they're high school kids too. They're no different. Watching the pain that they deal with every day. Watching how they come to school. They come to school with happy little smiles, but boy, do they deal with their own luggage. I'd like to see this board make a concerted effort to come and visit our schools, to see our kids, to read to them, to talk to them, find out what their obstacles are, because that's what we're doing. We're finding out what the obstacles are to make sure they get an education. But it would sure be nice for the board to say, hey, we can do it too. We can take that time. Again, I thank you for my 31-year career, not job. And I wish the best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to at least state for the record that I know Board Member Clark has been to each of our facilities at least twice in the current school year. All right, let's see. We have the Folsom Cordova Education Association. Welcome.
Thank you. Our new president, Jeanette Sansenbaugh, is out of the country. And so I am going to share the presentation that Deb Krikorian made before she, I think, danced is a fair way to describe it, her way into retirement. This was presented across the table Wednesday of last week at our final bargaining session. So as we build our ask, understand, yes, compensation will definitely be part of our ask, but it's a bigger picture than that. Our students need support systems, whether it's paraprofessionals to help with small group instruction, counselors, nurses, reducing the size of remedial classes. There's a lot that goes into serving our students, and you'll see that throughout the slides. In terms of spending, recruiting and retaining highly qualified teachers is important, and certainly compensation plays a role, but it's not the only piece of that. We also are looking to provide professional development built into the calendar. We used to be 185 days. We could be again. We would like to see the academic and health professional supports that our students need, and health is both physical and mental and emotional well-being as well. And it's exciting to have the community schools coming and hope to continue to grow, but those are also part of what we want to address. So as we look at recruiting and retaining highly qualified teachers, competitive salaries and benefits, of course, play a role in that. But as you look at these first two items, we'll come back to compensation. I have several slides on that issue. But I want to talk about number two for a second, being valued and respected. The last 2 days, a lot of people in this room spent time together in Folsom's auxiliary gym, and we want to thank Dawn for bringing the Arbinger training to us. Part of that training was to start by acknowledging that we're talking to people and not objects or budget line items. We want to make sure that we have schools that treat people as professionals, because being valued and respected isn't only about money. We have some things happening in our district that are promising. The new budget book, and Sean, you and I may be the only people who ever read the budget book in this district. Okay. It was a lot, but the new approach where it's going to school sites and giving school sites agency and how they spend their money makes enormous sense to me. I hope that we have teachers who step up and play an active role in this going farther into the future, and that we continue to measure how effective it is and are just, and that is Sam, straight out of our training over the last couple days. So that is a place where, as a teacher, if I have given agency in my own school, then that is part of feeling valued and respected. The community schools, both in the legislation language and in the grants, requires cooperation between all the parties, including families. And that is a promising moment, because hopefully it's setting a tone going further. But we've also had some stumbles. I am a high school teacher, so I'm sitting on the sidelines on this one. But my understanding is from several of my colleagues that the discussions that were held about early late did not match what was actually presented to the board later on. And there is some bitterness about that. There are some schools that were more successful in rolling out elementary PLCs than others. Where you have successes tends to be the places where the teachers feel like they are partners in the endeavor, and that is being valued and respected. It also includes things like communication. When we're transparent in our decision-making, if we're clear about the plans we've made, if everyone is on the same page and feeling part of the process, then you feel valued and respected. And a lot of the things I just listed don't require money. They require a growth and open mindset, and it includes treating each other as people and treating our bargaining members as professionals who have expertise in their content and should be partners in helping to make our schools serve our students the way we want them to do so. The next few slides, I told you we'd get back to budget, though. That is certainly still part of it. You've seen this slide before. I've talked about this slide before. I'm going to start over on the right. Folsom's declining investment in staff. Back to 17-18, we were 84, and this staff is everybody, classified, certificated, administrative, all of us. Went from 84% down to 79%. Seeming good news, you have a budget presentation coming up later that has that listed as 84%, but we dug a little deeper in the numbers, and I have some questions coming your way. On the left side, the percent of that is specific to FCEA, and that's been falling. And actually, it's falling a tick further with the new budget that's being presented when we dug into the numbers. So I did not have an opportunity to send you an email today. I was in a training. I will send an email tomorrow morning, and I will CC Sean as well. We'll share our math. We'll share our questions. I can ask the questions up here, but you are the elected representatives whose job it is and whose job it is to oversee and help make budget decisions and hopefully ask some of these questions. When we dug deeper into the SACS report, we updated the information on this slide, so I'm going to have to read a little bit and make sure I can see it. So you have seen the other budget up there. If you're like me and can't see the teeny tiny numbers anymore, on the left-hand side was 2017-18 when FCEA share of the budget was 41.78%. You don't have to see the tiny numbers to see that those bars are not going in a good direction from our perspective. We dug into the SACS report, Standardized Account Code Structural Official State Report. It is in your agenda, linked it right from there and dug into those numbers. Slide 9 was where this information was coming from. When we dug into slide 9, for the upcoming 23-24 budget, managerial, both classified and certificated, actually increased by 1.1 million, which was an increase of 7.3% for that group. Classified went up by 6 million, which is a 12% increase, and well-deserved, and hopefully we now have everyone close, if not at, minimum wage.
Excuse me 1 second.
Yes.
Who's controlling the slides?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Me? Yes, I'm sorry, I'm updating the numbers on the bottom of that.
Oh, I thought you said on slide 9.
Oh, sorry, slide 9 in your SACS report.
Oh, okay, I'm
So
sorry.
if you wanted to go home tonight, dig into your SACS report. It's 184 pages.
All right.
Page 9 is where we found this. And then certificated, we actually are 428,000 less in 23-24 as we dug into the SACS report, or a decrease of 0.7%. And like I said, I will send you all the math in an email tomorrow. So before we go back to that, on here, I don't think it's as critical to look at every single number on the page. It's a general effect. And one thing I do want to point out, on the right-hand side is Rockland, which in the past has been a good comparison for us in terms of funding and UPP. On the left, you'll see Twin Rivers and Sacramento City Unified. This is their percent of total budget going to salary and benefits. The contrast is on the next slide. When you look at total services and other operating expenses, you'll see almost a flip in the pattern. On the previous slide, Rockland Unified was on the right, a very high percentage of their salary, a high percentage of their budget going to total salary and benefits. On this slide, they're not all the way to the left, but they're towards the left-hand side. On the previous slide, the lowest percentage of their budget going towards salary and benefits, Twin Rivers. If you look, they're on the right, all the way to the right. And while it oversimplifies the budgeting process, there's a pretty good balance between schools that are putting more of their money into salary and benefits, putting less of their budget into total service and other operating expenses. So I asked, help me define this because I'm still learning budgets and they're very complicated. And some of the things that you'll see in that category, consulting fees, contracts with outside sources, legal costs, And so if you can't draw a straight line comparison, I've been teaching stats too long to say we have direct correlation, but we do have a pattern where districts who are putting their money into their staff are not having to put their money into legal costs, are not having to hire out because they don't have the people hired in to provide, say, SPED services. So it is something that, as a board member, I hope you're going to ask some questions about as you look at your budget. Where are we putting our money? If budgets are a measure of our values, what is it we're valuing, and are we making smart choices? So what would it take to make FCEA back to our 40% from 17-19? Deb did the math on this one. I want to give full credit to where it's due. And this is as of May 18th, so maybe a little bit ahead of what you're going to see later tonight. But it would take an additional $12.9 million in salaries, benefits, and filling vacancies. I will note in the budget slide you're seeing tonight, it says, and I'm quoting, as of May 18th, over 700 open positions are built into your budget. That's amazing. It's certainly not all our bargaining unit, but it has an amazing number of open positions that are held open and part of the budget. So it may look like money is going into people, but if there's no people in those vacancies, it's not going to the people who are still actually working here. The other piece of it, and you've seen this slide before too, we're still not meeting our LCAP goal of hiring and retaining qualified staff. This is as of May 18th. I will tell you in the last 2 weeks, as I've gone around to different meetings and to graduations, I can think of a handful of teachers I know who've resigned. Don, I don't know how many letters you still don't have signed committing to coming back next year. I think that when we come back in August, some of them will be on this chart. So while it's not as bad as it looked last year yet, I don't think these are numbers that we're happy about. If we're hiring people and not keeping them, it's not a good choice of budget. We're wasting money. If we're hiring people and losing them 5 to 10 years later, then we provided them training that other schools and other students and other families are benefiting from. So I know that we're asking questions on how to fix that. I know that in the budget, we have an additional 56 FTEs, or 5 2/3 teachers, going into TOSA positions to help support people, but it also leaves more classrooms without teachers. So it's a complicated process. It's one that's going to have to be tackled, hopefully in partnership with all parties. But it does contribute to asking questions if you're really valued and respected, because the people in that chart aren't really feeling that way. Another place, and this is what I mean, it's a complicated picture. All of this came from people's websites. We obviously highlighted Folsom Cordova. In reality, those class sizes aren't accurate. What's happening in the class sizes in elementary, far better when that chart looks like. But that's what our contract says. So if I'm a mid-level teacher and I'm smart enough to look at the contracts before I go sign with a new district, that's what the contract says. So we have just pieces that don't even involve budget that we could do to help ourselves look more attractive compared to other districts. Because mid-level teachers are shopping. And I heard someone the other day look, I'm a 34-year career professional. I'm not job shopping at this point. But there are people who have nearly 30 years who can actually make more money if they switch, even at this late date. So we need to think about every piece of this puzzle that would help us retain staff. So the good news, and there's some tiny bit of good news, the 8.22% COLA still in the budget. I don't know that it's clear where the money's coming from. There's always that rainy day fund, but the governor seems committed to it. Certainly part of that should be coming to our bargaining unit. It covers COLA for not just some pieces. They're putting COLA into a lot of pieces. So there is money, and that money's they're not gonna un-COLA us next year in the future. So we need to think about how we're spending that money and not saving it, spending it on the people who are here now. Because the students in our district now should reap the rewards of that COLA. Not 10 years from now, because we're putting it in the banks for something to happen later on. So, board, please do ask lots of questions as you look at the budget. It's not a final document. I don't think we're going to have a final budget or know everything about the budgeting process until, was it October, when all the tax receipts come in? But the more we ask questions now, the more that our bargaining unit is part of the decision-making and feel like they're part of the decision-making, the fewer people slip out the back to another district over the next couple months. So, other professional needs. We mentioned that. Student support systems. You've had other groups talking in front of here. 401 ratios are still crazy town when you have professionals working with students in some of the most difficult parts of their lives, but it's better than where we are now. Adding paraprofessional hours for kindergarten, these things cost money. We know that. But on a practical basis, all of you are welcome, I'm sure, to find a kindergarten classroom to spend time in without that paraprofessional, and I think you'll find that value. Providing one elementary and one intermediate intervention teacher at minimum for every elementary school. Some of that's happening, and some of the schools are choosing to spend their money on that from the budgeting process, which tells you how important it is. More nurses. And then the K-2 class averages, especially with the loss of early late. Small group is not small group when you have 24 8 or 9-year-olds or 7-year-olds running around. It just isn't. Almost there. Safety. We have made progress on safety language and bargaining. I attended the safety committee a couple weeks ago, and there's exciting things happening there as well. But you heard O'Mara, it's not safe in all of our classrooms. And we need to address that. It's not okay for students. It's not okay for the people who work for you. On the budget priorities, this is what we feel is a priority. This is our official ask. 10% across the board salary increase. It's not going to put us ahead of everybody else, but at least it keeps us somewhat competitive. We'll see where everyone else settles in the future, but at least it kind of keeps us in the game. Health benefits, and that affects all of us. But at least try to cap it, so if I'm a single parent, I'm not having to choose between childcare and healthcare. Primary class size maximums. The early literacy issue is a problem. The change in early late has had consequences. More counselors and nurses, strong safety language that's enforced with fairness, but with everyone's safety in mind. And then community schools, let's live up to what we put in the grants. Let's have that shared governance. Disaggregated decision-making, I believe is a phrase I heard at one of the meetings. Let's truly act as partners, and that will leave your staff feeling valued and respected. And at least we can address number 2, even if number 1, more compensation, will certainly be challenging over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see, that takes us to the Folsom Cordova Leadership Association.
No report today.
Okay, thank you. No report, and then finally, the District English Learner Advisory Committee. Welcome.
We also have no report tonight. Thank you.
All right. It is summer, isn't it? All right, that takes us to agenda consent. We will be removing or doing separately, removing from the consent agenda items C and D. Was there any other items to be pulled from the consent? No, all right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items C and D?
I'll motion.
Motion by Board Member Lofthouse. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Second by Board Member Hui. Superintendent, you will take the roll.
Ms. Perez?
Abstain.
Ms. Srivastava?
Abstain.
Thank you. Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
All right, and that takes us to the consent agenda items C and D. Both items C and D are expulsion recommendations. C is case number 2223-5S, and D is case number 2223-6S. We will take these one at a time. We pulled these so that the student board members can potentially abstain. So item C, approve expulsion recommendation, case number 2223-5S. Superintendent, oh, actually, is there a motion? Sorry.
I'll move.
Motion by Board Member Hui, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Lofthouse. Superintendent, will you take the vote, please?
Ms. Perez?
Abstain.
Ms. Srivastava?
Abstain.
Thank you. Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
No.
Okay, motion carries 3-1. Thank you.
All right, and item D, approve expulsion recommendation, case number 2223-6S. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Board Member Clark. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Board Member Hui. Superintendent, take the vote, please.
Ms. Perez?
Abstain.
Ms. Srivastava?
Abstain.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
All right, I understand we have a couple of introductions.
We do. And it's my honor to, first of all, introduce our new Maintenance and Operation Manager, Mr. Cliff Roberson. He has been selected as the Maintenance and Operation Manager and will oversee district custodial staff and monitor maintenance operations. And he is not a new face to our district. He's been with us for 20 years, and 17 of which were at the warehouse and logistics manager. He started his career for Folsom Cordova in 2018 at Sutter Middle School as a campus monitor. There he made a significant impact and was honored as the 2019 Sutter Middle School's Classified Employee of the Year. In 2020, Cliff made a seamless transition to the building, grounds, and maintenance staff, and in January 2022, Cliff was promoted to the position of Maintenance Mechanic 2. With his rich blend of professional experience, technical expertise, and a passion for excellence, Cliff will continue to make a positive impact in his new leadership role. Congratulations, Cliff.
Thank the board for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cliff.
Welcome.
Next, it's my honor to talk about Pam Moyen, who's been promoted from coordinator position to director of educational technology. And Pam will have additional responsibilities in this role. As director, she will be coordinating all data analysis and reporting, alignment of the student information system and other data system infrastructure, utilization and design to support district strategy and needs, creation of a core district data team. Having all these roles under one department will allow for cross-training for our systems, broader understanding and visibility of all data reporting, and removing barriers of information being isolated to expertise of individuals. So we know this is an area of need, and we know Pam is the right person to help lead us in that frontier. So congratulations, Pam. And next, it's my honor to introduce and recognize Jerry Wickham, the new Director of Facilities Development. And Jerry has been with our district for quite some time too, but in her new role, she'll have additional responsibilities of coordinating and supervising the construction of new schools and district facilities repairs, reconstruction, and relocation. She'll work closely with developers, builders, and local city and county agencies to coordinate development of new schools, oversee the preparation and implementation of the developer fee program, facilities master plan, attendance boundary modifications and enrollment projections, joint use and facility use agreements, and coordinate with state agencies such as the Office of Public School Construction, Division of the State Architect, Department of Toxic Substance Control, and State Department of Education on construction-related approvals and funding applications. Thank you, Jerry, for your commitment to this role, and congratulations. And last but certainly not least, we also want to congratulate Angela Griffin and Kelly, who has been promoted to Chief Communications and Community Engagement Officer. Again, she's been with our district since 2013, currently is our Director of Communication and Community Engagement. However, in her new role, she'll have additional leadership responsibilities, which will include strategic planning, development, management, and training for all district communication channels, including the website, mass notifications, and social media. She'll be representing FCUSD at community, state, and national functions as requested by the superintendent. She'll be overseeing fund development, corporate and philanthropic grants, management, and in-kind donations. And she'll be developing and managing processes and systems for garnering community input and support on key initiatives and issues. Thank you, Angela, and congratulations. Thank you to all, and congratulations to all.
Congratulations. All right, that takes us to agenda item 11. We have two public hearings, so I guess we need to gavel into both. Well, we'll do one at a time. So let's see. The first public hearing is on the 2023-2024 tentative budget. Superintendent.
Yes, part of the process of adopting the budget for the next school year is to bring the budget to the board and to the public, and to give our public an opportunity to comment on the budget. And EdCode does require our board to adopt its budget for the next year by July 1st. And the budget document incorporates the guidelines and staffing formulas for the next year and projected actuals for 22-23. And with that, I'm going to welcome Mr. Martin to share the overview of it, and then we can open it up to public comment.
Good evening. And yes, so before I get started, I do want to just take a quick moment to recognize the staff. Technically, the 23-24 budget was started last September when we started looking at some of the reallocation of the supplemental dollars. Went through that process, created new staffing ratios for quite a few positions, worked with HR, the sites, and the fiscal team, the budget team, to get the document together. As you heard, it's well over, with my presentation as well, I think it's getting close to 200 pages. On top of that, you'll also be getting the budget book, which will be coming probably in September or so, that will summarize everything that we're presenting tonight. But I do want to recognize specifically the team, Linda Thurlow, our director, Katrina Glover, our manager. She came tonight too. Thanks, Katrina. Hey. We also have Megan, Janelle, Connie, Eileen, Michelle, Crystal, Sharon, and Grace, along with the rest of the fiscal team and also payroll, benefits team, all of those folks, along with HR. We work on creating the document that you see here tonight. And as we always say, it's a living, breathing document. The only thing we know for sure is it's going to be absolutely wrong. So, and we'll talk about that, about the budget process. So, pop it up here, okay. And so at this point, the first slide here is kind of our boilerplate that just talks about the fact that what we're looking at tonight is a summary of the budget. As Tracy shared, the SACS documents that will be submitted to the county office is actually our budget documents. The fund form and supplemental forms are actually the documents that are submitted and reviewed by the county office and then our auditors. So really, this is just a high-level overview of the key components of the budget. When we're talking about the budget, we also are primarily focused on the general fund, Fund 01, which is the primary area where the majority of our activities are in the district. But I do have a summary slide that will also give a quick overview of our other funds that the district has. But this is kind of the key area, is the general fund. We also have to realize that we're using a lot of data based off our information or assumptions based off of previous date. We're looking at information as of May. And so already there are changes that are occurring in the conversations at the state budget. Enrollment information at our sites is changing. Staffing is changing. All of those things are changing from this. So we have to always remember this is a snapshot in time of the information that we have at this moment. That's why we update it more or less quarterly throughout the year, throughout our process. The last thing I would note is not only are we looking at the budget for 23-24 tonight, but there are also information about updating the 22-23 budget, which goes through June 30th. That we update information as of May 1st for that as well. So kind of building the budget, what is it that we built it upon and what do we know, right? There is a lot that will ultimately change between this meeting and conversation tonight and when the budget gets adopted at the state, and then when we come back and look at this again in December at the first interim budget. One of the biggest pieces is, of course, the state budget, which is primary funding source for us. All the different state pots equal to about 80% of our budget. Those dollars have not been determined yet. What we know at this point, we've shared with the May revise from the governor. The governor is proposing full funding of the COLA. We've seen now the proposals from both the Senate and the Assembly at the state level. They also are recommending fully funding of the COLA, the 8.22% for that. So we do have that in the budget. The governor has proposed some cuts to some of the one-time funding that we actually received in the 22-23 budget. We talked about that. Both of the legislatures, both houses of the legislature have looked at reducing that cut, not as significant as the governor's proposing. At this point, for 22-23, we updated based off of the governor's proposal for the reduction in those categorical funds. And so that's what's reflective in this budget and estimated actuals. What we believe will honestly happen is there will be a deficit greater than what the governor's proposing. As Tracy shared, we won't have tax receipts until October due to postponement of the tax collection window due to the flooding and the storms. And because of that, we really won't know where the state budget is. But Legislative Analyst Office has projected $11 billion shortfall from the governor's May proposal, the day after the governor proposed it. Believe it or not, the Senate side actually took the better of the legislative analyst number for one tax area, but then took the governor's area for another tax area. So they actually showed that they actually get $2 billion more than the governor proposes. So somehow they've made a budget that allows them to be $13 billion greater than what Legislative Analyst Office is projecting. I can't make these numbers up. This is what they're doing. And so what ultimately happens in that scenario is if they approve a budget that then later on they cannot fund, they will have to look at different mechanisms to balance the budget. And one of the ways that we are hearing that they will do so is to defer the actual allocation of the dollars until the next fiscal year. And we've seen that before. That is it's an accounting mechanism more or less to lower the Proposition 98 guarantee and then ensure that the state doesn't have to fund school districts at a higher level. So it's a mechanism more or less that defers the actual cash. So everything we're doing here, really, budget is all on paper. What really matters, and we always talk about, is cash is king. And so really what they are doing is effectively cutting us our budget, but they reflect it on paper as though they pay it, but then we don't have the cash to actually pay our bills until the next year. And so that's what starts happening. And if you've been around long enough, we've had to deal with this before. What often has to happen is, as a district, we then have to get more or less a line of credit, what we call a tax revenue anticipation note or a TRAN note. And we then have to more or less have a line of credit available to us to be able to pay our bills on a daily basis, even though the budget says we have money. And so that's the reality of what we're probably projecting in the next couple of years. Now, in the out years, we're going to talk about the multi-year and the fact of some of the situation that the governor is proposing is using one-time money for ongoing funding of the COLA. And so we have concerns about that as well. So with regards to staffing, you can see there we're projected to be 84% of the budget is staffing. As you can see, though, there are 700 positions unfilled as of when we were doing that on May 18th. But it should be recognized that a significant portion of those positions have either people in them or they're new positions. I think like 90 of those positions are ELOP related. If you remember, that's the after-school program, the 9-hour-a-day program, because we're trying to fully expand that. So some of those are for those positions. Some are positions that are open, that are truly open. There are some that are also, though, positions that are filled, but we just haven't finalized. What has to happen in our position control system is to actually attach it to a person. That person has to be interviewed, apply for the job, get completely cleared, and then accept, and then get their letter, and then sign. So not all of those steps have been completed yet. So I think where we will really ultimately see a majority of our open positions are on the classified side. I think on the certificated side, I think if Don was to speak to it, he would say that the majority of our certificated positions we feel like will be filled at the time of school starting. Classified, though, is an area still that we're continuing to work, and that is why we are having a career fair coming up. So the other thing that's not in the adopted budget, going back on the adopted budget for staffing, we do fully budget having all positions filled, but we also know that that is probably not really going to happen. But our budget book, the way we standardize our budget is at the adoption period, we put all positions in, and then during the course of the year, as positions remain unfilled, we then release those funds, and that's why you do see an adjustment on the difference between the expenditures. And that is something that we recognize. And so we're monitoring that. We'll have an updated number here once we get closer to start of the school year and we actually see the positions. We'll have an idea of the exact number of positions open, and we'll have a dollar amount associated with that. Now, long-term, ideally, you're going to have those positions filled, right? And once the job market hopefully returns to a normal state, you will always have flux, but it wouldn't be as significant of a level it is currently the last few years. Carryovers, one-time money, we don't budget those at adopted budget either. So at this point, all those one-time activities are carryover from the previous year, like fundraiser monies, those site monies. Those are not actually recognized in the budget at adopted budget. That's why during the course of the year, you'll see expenditures increase for those categories, right? And then therefore, that adjusts the expenditures and the revenues and all of those areas, right? And the last line I have is that this document really, and the purpose of the adopted budget is really more of a compass. Where are we as a district? Are we financially sound? Do we have a deficit? Do we have a surplus? And looking at the multi-year, what direction are we going with the assumptions we're making? But it has to be clear that there is a lot of assumptions based off of our enrollment next year, our attendance level next year, the state funding, staffing, all of those factors. So the next slide, of course, our key area of revenue is based off of attendance. One of the things you do see here is the bar is our enrollment, and the line is our attendance rate, or attendance or ADA, average daily attendance, I should say. And what you see is the bar for 23-24 is actually for the first time higher than our highest level pre-COVID. So we do actually think we will continue to be growing. And hopefully this is a conservative growth number. Hopefully we'll gain more kids. We definitely want to continue to grow. But correspondingly, when you see the ADA, the funded ADA, you see that it's actually lower than some of our historical numbers. Where back in, 1920, in 1819, we're at about 19,600 ADA. You're seeing that we're around 19,300. And that's because what we have seen in the last couple of years since we've returned from COVID is our attendance rates haven't rebounded, even though our enrollment has. So historically, we've had attendance of about 95.7% of our enrollment, of our CBEDS enrollment. But this year, we were around 93%, and 93.46, depending on where we finalized at. And that's an issue, obviously, because we get funded not on the enrollment returning, but the attendance returning. And so that's a significant area that we want to continue to monitor. And I know Scott and the attendance due process team and the school sites are working on initiatives to hopefully increase those attendance rates, right? So for the purposes of projection, though, for 23-24, we're projecting at 94% attendance to enrollment, right? And then in 24-25 and 25-26, we're projecting at 95%. So we are trying to hopefully project, but I'm hoping that's conservative. I would really love for us to return back to our traditional numbers. That would obviously bring additional revenues in for those 3 years. But at this point, because of where we were this year, and we have not seen that rebound back to pre-COVID levels. So that impacts the ADA, which is the funding part. Other key revenue assumptions, you can see the COLA of 8.22% is included in this projection. However, we do note that the Legislative Analyst Office projects a deficit there. The Prop $28, which were passed in November, that is the art and music education funding. We did not budget that at this point because the state actually hasn't given us any allocations. And we also actually don't even have the SACS resource code to be able to put it in the budget. So we couldn't budget for it because the state hasn't provided any of that information yet. School Services has given us a projected estimate of about $2.7 million. It should be recognized, though, that the way the language is written in the ballot measure, that $2.7 million would not be a district allocation. That would be split out between sites. So individual sites would get an allocation, which combined equals the $2.7 million. So it's not as though we would be able to spend that as one pot. It would actually be a site-directed funding mechanism, is our understanding of it. But we're still waiting from CDE on that. We do have local revenues projected to be back up pre-COVID levels. We have seen a drop in facility use, transportation fees, and other activities such as that, but we are hoping that will be back to pre-COVID levels. And then we do have some one-time revenues projected with regards to electric bus. So here's our LCFF calculation. You can see there We've walked through this one before, so I don't think I'm going to spend too much time on it, but you can see our allocation is about $233 million or so, minus $1 million going out to the county office. On the revenue side, you can see we're breaking it down by unrestricted and restricted. We always talk about that. Restricted are those categorical pots that normally have limitations to how the funds can be used. Biggest single restricted pot would be special education. On the unrestricted side, that's really the area we kind of primarily focus on because that's where we can often make priorities and make choices on where we spend those dollars. You can see the LCFF entitlement goes up by about $16 million. That is due to the COLA. We actually are lower ADA for 23-24 over 22-23 because we were being in hold harmless. In 23-24, we are projecting current year ADA. So we are still dropping. So there's 154 ADA there. That actually decreases and offsets some of that COLA gain that we could have potentially got. Other state income, you see an increase there. That's actually on the unrestricted side. That's due to the new transportation funding. So 60% of our transportation cost is now reimbursed by the state. And so we've built that in the budget last year. Our expenditures went up this year as we continue to hire staff back and be able to run more routes. We also had significant salary increases for our transportation bargaining unit specifically. And so those costs increased, fuel, everything else increased with it as well. And because of all of those reasons, we actually are getting additional revenues. But of course, the expenditures went up as well. Local income, you do see an increase there. The two biggest items there are we had that electric bus grant. We've had it before I've been on the board, so this would be the third year of this grant that we were supposed to get buses quite a long time ago. The vendor that was going to provide them was unable to provide them. We had to regroup, if you remember, and so now we're hopefully going to receive those buses in the first quarter of this upcoming 23-24 year. But we'll cross our fingers on that one. And then we're also doing, E-rate is a federal revenue reimbursement that comes in as local income to offset the purchase of certain technology equipment. We get about a 60% discount on that based off of our unduplicated count as a district. And we're more or less doing a big project this year that will be replacing out our wireless networks throughout the district. Because of just enhancement in technology and more devices on our network and our old system aging out. So that will be a project that David Stone and his team will be working on. On the restricted side, revenues, you can actually see for the most part, those are all dropping. That's because we received a lot of one-time restricted revenues. You can see there federal income, state income, both of those had some COVID funds that we were recognizing as we spent them. So those revenues drop and then correspondingly expenditures associated with them go down as well. We also received one-time money, that art, music, instructional materials, that's one of those two pots. And then the learning recovery is the other one that the governor is making a proposal to decrease. Those decrease in 22-23, and then in 23-24, we don't recognize that revenue, so you have to take it out. And that's why you see that negative $20 million there. Same thing with local income. You see one-time items being pulled out, donation fundraiser accounts for our school sites, along with Measure H, because we haven't technically received any of those things yet and been awarded. Therefore, we pull those out of the budget, and then the expenditures move out as well. So you can see combined revenues overall are actually decreasing, but on the unrestricted side, they are increasing, but that's because all those one-time items are coming out on the restricted side. So. All right, moving on to expenditures. Any questions on the revenues?
Mr. President.
Yes.
Sean, quick question. When do we expect the funding for that one-time money for Measure H? I mean, you said it's not.
You know what? I let me see if Angela has a.
Angela can answer that.
Hi, so at this point, City Council is in the approval phase of all of the upcoming contracts. Those contracts will then be written and issued out in batches for signatures to all the various organizations that have been awarded a Measure H grant request. Once the contract is signed, usually by the fall, the funds will then be allocated. So we should be seeing some of those funds receiving those by this fall.
Okay, I mean, it kind of makes me nervous that maybe that should be pending Measure H funds that are coming in. I mean, because, you know, what if city council, not saying that they will, but let's say they renege on it and say, well, we're going to pull back. I mean, is it guaranteed that we're going to get this funding?
It is, it would be highly unlikely that there would be a reversal. And those funds, even if the funds are not allocated until, let's say, the fall, we can start spending against them come July 1 because our fiscal year and the city's fiscal year are in alignment, and the contract reflects that July 1 to June 30th. So it would be fair and safe to go ahead and make plans for those expenditures starting our fiscal year, because that is how the contract will be written.
Kind of, in essence, we're spending money that we don't have.
I think, again, we're spending money according to how the contract would be written.
Okay.
So we don't recognize the revenue side, and the expenditures, there are certain expenditures that are we do have built in, but not all of the Measure H are built into the budget either.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I did have another question. If we can go back to page 4, it doesn't, you're talking about our enrollment projected to grow a little bit. How does the charter schools play a role in this, where obviously they're going to be in our district, that they might pull some of our students?
For us right now at that point, we don't have a clear indication on how much that will impact or not impact the enrollment. What we normally do is we work with both facilities and ed services on packets to look at current year enrollment, move it forward, make assumptions on new homes. The biggest impact right now for us when we do projection is what is the kindergarten registration going to be? The rest of the grade levels, we kind of have a trend because we have the kids right now, right? So if we lose kids because of that reason, the truth is we don't adjust for it from purposes of my numbers. Hopefully my numbers are conservative enough that it won't see much fluctuation there. But we will know once the New Pacific School opens up. One of the first things we will do is we'll be getting from them is their student information, and we can see where they were originally coming from.
I mean, I don't think it would make much of a difference, but would we kind of adjust our projection once that happens?
If we saw a significant trend, I mean, if we could see that because of that school, we saw a grade level or a school site drop in enrollment, we definitely would want to adjust that. It's just because it's new and we don't have any unit to measure that with, to make a projection right now would be hard. So, we're not overly aggressive in my enrollment projections. I'm not overly aggressive. I try to use kind of the middle of the different numbers we're seeing. Normally facilities is pretty spot on. Jerry's numbers are very strong, very good. And so we normally try to use that as our kind of our anchor point. And I look at that along with what we know at the school site, and then also the packets that we're getting. We had a very robust enrollment process this year. Angie and her team worked on working with the school sites to get additional students registered, specifically in our TK and lower grade areas, especially on our community on the Rancho side, where often our registration process is lengthier. It takes longer to get those packets back.
Right.
And so we're hoping that our numbers are more accurate this year.
Okay. And if we can go back to page 3, and this will be the last of my questions. You mentioned hiring of classified and certificated staff, and I, for some reason, didn't write down the numbers of how many positions did we have open?
On the slide, it says there's 700, but it's important to understand that for me, that's out of position control, which is different than HR. I think HR's number is significantly less than that because of the fact that they know those people are pending being hired. They've gone through the process. They're just not in position control. On my side, my position control is kind of the last step to get them in the system. And so often our number lags the real number with HR. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Okay, so this may be a question for Don, and I have to ask this. Well, it looks like he took off, but those 700 open positions, and I just have to ask, maybe I'm being a little facetious, but how many of those would include like instructional aides?
The largest portion of those positions are classified positions. They would be instructional aid, specifically on the special education side of the house. Also, because we expanded and we are providing kindergarten aides 2 hours with every kindergarten class. The other big lift right now is the expanded learning opportunity program. That is the after-school program. We're receiving $7 million for that program, and that's almost fully being staffed by classified positions. And so there is over, I think, 80 or 90 positions that we posted in the last 2 months for that.
Okay, just have to ask for clarification one more time that you mentioned aides for special ed, which is great because it's my babies, but what about our first and second grade IAs? Are we looking at putting those in as part of the open positions?
So in the budget at this point, we do not have anything on a district allocation for first and second grade for aid support. Some of our school sites are using their site-directed funds to do that, but there isn't anything in the budget for that.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the revenue before we move on over to expenditures?
Do any other board members have additional questions? No, I actually have one or two.
Okay.
On page 3,
Yeah.
the 700 openings that you mentioned, how many openings on average do you think go unfilled during a fiscal year?
I would have to do an analysis, especially because of COVID, the numbers are significantly different than what we would say are historic, right? So this is, I hate the term, unprecedented in the sense that the amount of openings that we have, and of course that is not unique to Folsom Cordova. We read articles across the United States of open positions, and we see signs in every business looking for hired employees. I think we could try to see if we can get a historical number of open positions at this point in the year. But also, I think it's very important to recognize that we have so many new dollars, right? Because we are now allocating supplemental dollars to school sites. There is a lot of new positions that the sites are allocating dollars towards that we have to hire that has not normally been in place. ELOP is new positions. The kindergarten aid positions are new positions. We reallocated formulas for health clerks, office staff. What else did we increase? We increased, I'm trying to remember all the other positions that we adjusted. A yard supervision, we just increased. So all of those changes, anytime you make new changes, obviously new positions are generated. And so all of those positions are part of that 700. So in years where you're not creating new positions, obviously then the number drops dramatically because you're just filling people that have left existing positions, whereas adding new bulks up this number significantly.
The reason why I asked the question, and the number of employees we have in the district, at least budgeted, is roughly about 2,200, correct? Give or take? What's that?
2,800 is what he said.
2,800?
Right.
Okay. So, 700, all right, so that's a little less than 1/3. I was thinking.
Well, and also these are positions, so these are, some of these positions are an hour and a half. As Omera had spoken to, a yard supervisor position could literally be an hour. Okay. The 90 or so position, 87 or whatever it was that we did for ELOP, those were 2.5-hour positions, 3-hour positions, or after school. So when you convert them into FTEs, it's significantly less.
Okay, so it could be this, it's deceptive, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the optics, I guess, because I know last year, a point was made that 1/3 of our employees were new employees. And, when you look at 700 open positions, one could potentially draw the conclusion that 2/3 of our staff just turned over in a period of 2 years. A little less because of the number of openings. And that's why I was kind of curious how many of those positions might have been open last year as well.
Right.
Because certainly we haven't had 2/3 of our staff turnover in 2 years, correct?
No.
Okay, all right. All right, and I also noticed on this slide, you indicate that it's projected that 84% of the 23-24 expenditures are staff related. Maybe you don't have an answer to this, and you can maybe find it, maybe send the board an answer to this, but how come that number is so different from the union projection, which I think they said 79%?
They were using second interim number, and the 84% number will lower. The truth is at adopted budget, we budget all positions being filled, so that's a bigger portion of the budget, right? What will happen is as those positions remain open, there won't be an expenditure there potentially, so it'll become a lower percentage, right?
Okay.
Because all the other expenditure, utilities will continue to be paid, but maybe a salary for an aide that goes unfilled will not, and that position will. Additionally, when we bring carryover dollars in, so our school sites spend a couple $1 million in donation money yearly, right? So when we put that in the budget, that they're not buying people, they buy field trips and they buy paper and they buy activities and supplies and other things. And so those expenditure lines will go up from adopted budget, right? I think it's important to recognize that percentages only provide context if you know the information that percentage is based off of, right? I mean, I can tell you that all of our percentages will change because one of the bigger costs that we have in the budget is a $2 million for buses. If I didn't have that $2 million in buses, well, guess what? Everything else would go up as a bigger percentage of the budget. But in the years where I don't buy a bus, then yeah, salaries are a bigger portion of the budget. The year that I buy textbook adoptions or I buy a bus, then they become a smaller portion. So like when you go back to 17-18 or 18-19, when the teachers were, our certificated staff was a bigger portion of the budget, we'd have to analyze why that was the case. Maybe that year we didn't have any COVID costs. We had no textbook costs. Maybe that was a year we were cutting back on everything. So we didn't do any professional development. We didn't do anything extra, and we only paid for our salaries, right? Because that was probably a tight budget time. So that would make it a bigger portion of the budget. But when the budget has an opportunity to grow, I think you have to look at dollars, because last year we did over an 8% settlement, right? So we put over $16 million easily into the budget that was all salaries and benefits. So as a dollar amount, for sure, as a percent of the budget, it does look more because we also received $30-40 million in one-time funds that have to be spent on potentially things that aren't people, right? So we have to balance those conversations. We all have to agree on what are the factors that we're trying to understand, right? And try to be fair and accommodating to all folks, so.
No, that was a helpful explanation, thank you. And then my final question for now is, how realistic do you think this 8.22 COLA is going to be?
I think politically it's 100% realistic. It will be funded.
Okay.
I don't think there's any question that COLA will not be. What I see happening is the truth is the state can not truly afford it ongoing. They will not reduce that COLA. What they will do is defer the revenues for it for 1 year. And we're going to get there in the multi-year, so I don't want to overdo it at this point. But in 24-25, that COLA is 3-something%. They probably can fund that COLA using the rainy day funds, the reserve funds, because they're not accessing them this year. So, and then the third year out, that's when the big question happens. They've used a bunch of one-time money. And remember, because of that one-time money, they've got to pay the 8% COLA, the 3% COLA. Now they're 11% upside down. They don't have the money. What are they going to do? And that's what happened back in the day when Arnold Schwarzenegger came as the governor and asked us to cut $2 billion from the education budget, right? And that's when we had those most severe cuts. We reduced the school year. They eliminated a bunch of categoricals. If you were around in that time, that was significant layoffs, everything you could see. And that's, hopefully we won't end up there. Hopefully the economy will turn before then, but I don't want to be Mr. Gloom and Doom. And we have time, to get there, but that is the concern, because they're what I would say is they're doing what I would consider unhealthy methods of balancing the budget and not having clear ways to get themselves out when the budget gets worse or even stays where it's at. So,
okay.
All
right. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So let's get over to expenditures. So expenditures, we break them out by object code. And this is, again, just a more counting language, the standardized account code structures. 1s through 3s are people. As I think Elena says it best, these are our nouns. These are our people. So our 1s through 3s are our staff and benefits associated with that. And you can see it's about 86% of the unrestricted budget, about 84% of all expenditures at adopted budget. But like we talked about, that percentage probably will drop because of how the budget will play out. Now, the offsetting to that is we haven't done any salary settlement or negotiated settlement, so that could potentially increase the percentage. All positions are budgeted. As we talked about, we project a step-in column. Because our salary schedules, we have to remember, we have a built-in salary schedule that the majority of the staff will get an annualized raise on the step-in column on a salary schedule, right? And some folks won't if they're on stagnant years, they have years between before, but the majority of our folks will get a raise each year. We also have a cost increase on our PERS rate. STIRS stayed the same, but our PERS contribution rate went up another 1.3%. So you have to remember, we pay on classified people, we pay PERS, we pay Social Security, workers' comp, Medicare. When you add all those things up, when we look at a rate that we're paying on a classified employee, you almost need to add 40% to that rate for the statutory costs that the district pays. And that's not including health and welfare. So we have to realize that salary is not the only piece we pay when we're paying our employees. Right, and it is a benefit to those employees because they do get that retirement when they retire. So we have to look at it as part of the overall settlement and our costs when we're looking at any kind of increase or adjustment. 4,000s and 5,000s, that's books and supplies contracted services. We base that based off of historical usage, but also we meet with each department to allocate resources there, or we have site allocations. Object 6,000 are capital purchases, so that's going to be our buses, other purchases, large purchases over $5,000 that are considered capital equipment. And then 7,000s are transfer activities that we do, that we talk about under LCFF. I want to spend 1 minute, well, probably more than 1 minute the way I talk, on special education, just because one of the areas, I know, one of the questions that will come up is, we're seeing a significant increase in LCFF revenues, but yet we're seeing a deficit increase, and why is that? It's a combination of multiple factors, but one of them is the fact that we are in a place where our services and needs of our students is continuing to grow. And it is growing at a level that requires additional resources that is above and beyond the allocation of funding that we get at the state and federal level for special education, which means it has to come from the unrestricted general fund to provide those services. And these are services the students deserve. We have no questions about that. We do a process, we look at individual student needs, we do IEPs, there's an assessment team. There are significant processes and steps that we do as a district. And I've been very impressed. I've worked in 5 different school districts, and the special ed team here is very attuned and very responsive to ensuring that they provide all the services for students, but they're also good stewards of the funds that we have as a district, right? And so what we're seeing here is $42 million is what we contribute from the unrestricted general fund to special education to fully fund the costs of the services that we're projecting for 23-24. It's a $10 million increase over last year. Now, not all of that increase is for this first item, but a big chunk of it is the fact that we are needing to provide 13 new program classrooms for next year. And that is based off of, and we do, we have a SELPA governance meeting and categorical that we do on a regular basis, and the team looks at the staff, looks at the student populations, the pending assessments for students that are potentially need services, our existing students, and so they're monitoring this frequently, and they're attending. We have administrators attend to all IEPs, and then these processes, and so these are situations where we have significant growth in these programs. And part of this is based off of the fact that Folsom Cordova is known for their special ed program. People move to Folsom Cordova to be in these programs, which is a testament to the services we provide to students, but we also have to realize that it does create additional cost. And so you can see here, when we add a new class, depending on the needs of the students, at a base level, a class is normally 1 certificated teacher, and anywhere from 2 to 3 classified paraprofessionals, special ed paraprofessionals. And that does not include any specific IEP requirements that may require one-on-one service or toiletry or anything else that goes above and beyond that service need for that student, right? And so when we look at an average cost on a class, you can see that it's, $250,000, $300,000. It can vary, it can be more, it can be less, but that is kind of a rough estimate to give you an idea of the costs associated with those classes. Additionally, when we're talking about all these classes, we have to realize there has to be a classroom for all of these programs. And so facilities, Jerry, Matt, the team have been working diligently with the Ed Services team and the school sites to find housing for all of these classrooms. And so this is a continued need. And in fact, when we were building Alder Creek, we added additional classrooms because of this, because we know this is a continued area. This and Universal TK and All Day K, those programs have expanded our facility needs as a district. So we have to keep that in mind as well. So that's a significant, that's close to about $4 million just right there. There are right now 96 classified support positions or 70 FTE. Those are the classified aid positions that are unfilled. Just so you know, right now we have all of those positions budgeted to be filled, and that's that. You have to remember at 22-23, when we're comparing to that number, those costs aren't there because those positions are unfilled. In 23-24, we're assuming they're all filled again. So that's why you're seeing a big cost increase, because it's not there in our current budget, but it is in the budget for next year. We also had one-time COVID special education funds that we were able to use to pay for some costs. Those dollars went away. That was a couple of $1 million, or actually I think it was close to $3 million that we were able to use to help offset some of that contribution from the general fund that this next year we won't have. So that more or less, that's part of this $10 million increase as well. The last one is the non-public school placement. I'm going to spend a little more time talking about that. A non-public school placement is when a student's IEP needs are requested services are outside of the scope that we can provide in a classroom setting. Normally, these are students that will go to, and I think I probably let Betty Jo speak to it in more detail, but often it's a behavior-related, not academic-related issue. And so for the safety of the student, for the safety of staff, everybody else, there are programs that are specifically created for those students. Occasionally, we have students that actually have residential placement where they are in a facility 24 hours a day. And those are becoming a more significant piece of the budget as well. So, did you have, Chris?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes.
Just for clarification, and I know that CSBA is in total agreement on the COLA. I know it's going to be guaranteed. My question would be, will special ed be getting part of that COLA? I mean, getting that COLA as well?
Yes, the COLA will be applied to the state portion of the special education funding.
To the state portion?
Mm-hmm. We get federal and state, so it's called a bifurcated COLA if you want. Because the federal government has their own funding, formula for the federal IDEA portion of special education. So, and that COLA increase is projected in there. So that $10 million increase is after the COLA.
So special ed would be included on.
They do get the COLA. Yeah.
All right. I just wanted that for clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You guys good?
Could I ask real quick?
Sure.
This might be better for Betty Jo, but the increase in numbers, is part of that due to the fact that we were not in school for a significant amount of time, and those students were then back in the classroom and things were kind of carried out and noticed?
Definitely.
Okay.
We see, we couldn't do child find. So for that first year, when we closed in March of 2020, we didn't do any more assessments. And then we started doing assessments again in about September, October. And so, and we have students who were referrals for preschool, for example, who disappeared during that time. And so we believe we had a number of kids who didn't get found when they weren't at school. And that's documented in our increase in our percentage in special education. So pre-COVID, our percentage in special ed was 13% of our population was in special education. And as we end the year here, we are now at 16%. So, which is, again, using Sean's word, this increase in the number of programs is unprecedented. But in talking with our Sacramento County SELPA colleagues, they're seeing similar percentages in their account in their SELPAs here in Sacramento County. Then adding just a couple of more details here is when we talk about, we see that in the non-public school placement. So right now we have 70 students in non-public schools. And Sean mentioned the reason for the placement, but I just want to add to that the majority of our students who are in non-public school placements have assaultive behaviors towards students or other staff. So it's a pretty significant reason why they're there. We don't typically place students because a parent requests it, for example. Parents really want their children educated in the least restrictive environment, so they don't tend to drive those kinds of placements. It's really more as Sean mentioned, the behaviors and the needs of the students. And then in regard to resident, and we're at 70 students, those numbers were on the way down. Pre-COVID, we were ranging a couple of years before we were at 70 and we were on our way down, and I think we were somewhere in the 50s, and then the placement started going up. So one thing that was different is that while the majority of the students do have those assaultive behaviors, because we had shortage of staffing this year, there were a few students that we didn't have the staffing in the class. So we might have, had we been appropriately staffed in those classrooms, then we might have been able to meet the behavior needs of the students. But because we were short-staffed, we couldn't meet the behavior needs of the students, and therefore they went to non-public school. So we hope those are the students that we can bring back the soonest. In regard to residential treatment, over my tenure in the district, this is my 10th year, and typically on an average year, we've gone from 0 to 1 to 2 students in residential treatment, and this year we had 7 students in residential treatment. And we're talking about an average cost of around $300,000 per student for a residential treatment placement.
That's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Betty Jo. Next slide here, a lot of information. What we're looking at, again, is similar to the revenues, unrestricted and restricted expenditures broken out. Top is unrestricted. You can see salaries going up, books and supplies, contract services going up on the unrestricted side, capital outlay adjusting slightly. On the restricted side, you see mostly negatives there. That's due to the fact that we're pulling out one-time activities, COVID dollars, funding for other programs, one-time payments. So. Continuing on, I think one of the questions, that has come up is about the services and, dollars going towards services. So I provided a couple slides to do a little deeper dive. We can definitely spend more time on this if there was more questions, but of the budget, 10% of it does go to services. It's about $32 million. You can see that majority of it, 58%, is for other services. The next largest is utilities at $7 million. Rental, lease, and repairs, it's about $3 million for copy machines. You can see HVAC, postage machines, elevator maintenance, some of the bigger ticket items. Insurance, that is an area that we continue to see continued costs. We've talked about this before, about hardening of the market, increase in settlements and lawsuits when you're seeing some of the sexual assault molestation claims that are over $100 million. Some of those things, those are, I think our bill with regards to a pool claim on that was, I think we said $160,000 that we had to pay this last year because we were in a pool that goes back to the 80s. And so we still have a liability for those claims because of the way, I think it's really important for people to understand that school districts, it's not as though we just have an insurance broker and we just go buy insurance and, from State Farm, like you would if you're a homeowner, which I think State Farm's one of the entities that's leaving the state. As you can see, we pool our services. And so insurance, when we have a claim on insurance, it actually comes out of our own ending fund balance. It really is. And so it's really important for people to understand that school districts are self-insured. We buy secondary insurance on the market, excess coverage, but the truth is by far our costs are our own. And so, folks need to recognize that when they create legislation that, that they believe is putting precedents in place that supports the victims and those things, and that's great, but they have to understand that there needs to be protections because truly these settlements then impact the current school district, the current students, the ability for us to provide classroom supports because of these settlement costs. And so there has to be some cleanup language, I think it would be our recommendation on that, so. Last item on there is travel and conference. You see that's about 5%. So on the next slide, I just kind of broke out the other services because that's really where we're talking about contracted vendors, things like that. So you can see that's $19 million, about 6% of the budget. Of that, the largest single item is for special education services. Of the amount there, the 5.5 million, about 4 million of it is non-public school placements, which we talked about. The other large items on there, software. That would be all the different Renaissance Learning, Edmentum, Power School, all the different software that we use as a district, that they use through classrooms. That would be second, purchase. The other area, big ticket items, instructional, classroom ELOP, and professional services. One of the big ticket items actually of that 2.4 million is ELOP. The board signed a contract to provide multiple enrichment programs in the after-school program. I believe that was a $600,000 or $700,000 contract alone. So that's a big ticket item there. And then you see the next largest is that gray one, retiree payments. That's actually payments to staff. So even though it's in the services area, it's actually for staff. It's for our retiree payments that we pay out, both the annual payment for health insurance, and then of course we did a retirement incentive a few years back. We're paying that off. And then you see other accounts. Another one I would note is you see student activities and fees. You see that's almost $2 million. Those are all the fundraiser activities, all the activities that the sites do. We run their activity through our budget. So as they do more and more activities, obviously that cost goes up. So that's going to be like their field trips, and when they bring in speakers or other activities, that's what's happening in that particular pot. And then you can see the rest. Legal services about $800,000. And then it drops down from there, so. Okay.
On the bright side, I see the board represents 0% of the budget.
Yes, in that particular area, yes. Well done.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Sean, I had a question for you. If we can go back to page 11 real quick on the travel and conferences. Now, does that, conferences, can you be a little more descriptive on that? Is it professional development conferences? Is it, because I know that the board, and I look at it as professional development when we go to CSBA, because again, we're continuously learning on governance and everything else that's happening. But the conference part, is it professional development conferences that we're going to? And if that's the case, when are they going? Are they going during the school year? Are they going during the summer?
Sure.
When is this happening?
So some examples would be like Solution Tree that was here earlier.
Right.
That would be a professional development that will fall into that category. So when they bring Solution Tree in and they do a professional development with their staff, that would be charged here. CSBA would be charged here.
And that would be in that.
Yeah, it's all it's a catch-all. We could definitely break that out into further. I did that at last year's adopted budget, and what we saw is majority of it is curriculum and instruction, classroom teacher, professional development. Mm-hmm. So, when we do, I think a big one right now is like the letters training. That's a big initiative. So
and don't get me wrong, they're all essential.
Oh, no, yeah. And then also in here is mileage reimbursement for staff that do use their own vehicles. Also in here is a few dues. We pay CSBA dues, we pay dues for AXA, some of those things. CASBO, some other organizations. But by far it's professional development, is where those funds
go. Is there any way to kind of get a breakdown of
that?
Sure,
sure, we can definitely do that.
Okay, just out of curiosity for me.
You got it. And one of the things that the board has approved that we're working on is more professional development for our staff, but we're really aiming for in-house, right? So then you wouldn't see it in the 5,000s. You would see it hopefully, some of the materials, or if you bring a vendor in, provide that. That may come from there, but if we can do it ourselves and do the trainer of trainers, then that cost then does go away from the 5s and it becomes a 1, 2, or 3. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
You got it. Okay. So when we bring the revenues and expenditures together, I feel like I'm going a little slower this time, guys. I apologize. You can see the the yellow column is our unrestricted. The next two columns are restricted in total, and you see estimated actuals. That's 22-23. That's what we're finishing the year up with. And then you see the budget for 23-24, and then the difference. The yellow column, if you go down to net increase, decrease the fund balance, you see for 22-23, we show a deficit of about $7.7 million. Hopefully that'll drop a little bit more by the time we close the books. But in 23-24, you see the deficit actually going up. So even with that new revenue that we talked about, our expenditures outpace that plus another, $2.5 million. And that was, as we talked about, it was several different things, but specifically, we had special education cost increases, costs related to step and column, PERS increase, the normal things that happen with personnel. And so what you see is a net increase of about $2.5 million. Now, I will tell you also that $10 million is hopefully the high watermark. Hopefully that number will drop because of all of the unfilled positions that are maybe associated with some of those savings. So there could be potential savings there associated with that. Hopefully, the revenue could increase because of the fact, and we're going to talk about that in the multi-year a little more, but we could hopefully hope for an increase in revenue corresponding to the fact that attendance rates will increase or enrollment will increase. So those are kind of the main revenue drivers that we could hope for. And then on the expenditure side, obviously we have negotiations still to do, and then the unknowns of costs during the year that potentially could occur. So going on this page, you can see we have an unrestricted ending balance of about 28 million, 35 in restricted. So we have $64 million is what we're showing as an ending fund balance. So on the next slide, we show how that $64 million breaks down. You can see coming out of the top, there's a couple of accounting type of items for revolving cash prepaid expenditures. Restricted accounts, you can see that's 35 million. So that leaves the remaining funds. You can see that the 16 million of it is what is considered committed. The board will take formal action to commit that. These are activities where we have created local resources to track these dollars. The big ticket items, we do have money, about $5 million sitting with a fiscal agent to hopefully get a better rate of return on an investment. That is in a trust fund that we can access those funds to help offset pension costs, increasing pension costs, which we did have this year for PERS, was about $400,000 increase. The other accounts that you see there, instructional materials, that's a big one with 3.4 million. That really was money that we have set aside for textbook adoptions. We have this pot along with restricted lottery. Those two pots together will help us when we have our next, I think math is our next adoption coming up. And so we'll be spending out a couple $1 million at least on that. And then right behind that, I believe we have another adoption, and I can't remember what the next one is. But and then the other big ticket item you can see there is supplemental funds. So we've been specifically targeting those funds. At second interim, we were projecting about a $7 million ending fund balance for 22-23. You can see that's dropped to 3.7 million. That's intentionally so. We're spending down that money. Those extra dollars are getting out to the sites. We're intentionally trying to allocate and spend down those dollars so that this year's award gets to this year's students. And we're spending above that really to enhance program this year. And that's what we're seeing there. So that 3.7 million over the next couple of years should get spent down. And then continuing on, the assigned items are items that are not in the budget, but that we expect expenditures for this year. So you see professional development. We have some professional development days that are optional days in this upcoming school year. So we have money reserved for that. That's really less than if everybody attends, but because it's an optional day, we did not see significant participation on all 3 days. So we budgeted a little less for that. You see there's about almost $1.5 million in safety. So the board allocated $2.5 million for safety. This safety team has spent almost $1 million, well, I guess a little over $1 million. And majority of that has been on cameras and a little bit of fencing. So, I know they're working on plans to spend down those remaining funds with conversations with the safety committee. I think fencing is a area of priority for the next pot of money. For the remaining funds there. But once those funds are depleted, we really don't have an ongoing source to do safety upgrades. This is, again, goes back to that conversation about potentially going out for bonds. Bonds are a really appropriate place to access those funds with the community for those safety improvements. And then the last thing you see is startup costs for Alder Creek. So this time next year, Alder Creek will be about ready to open, right? So we need costs for things like library books and some basic things. So the bond will pay for the furniture, a lot of the other setup, the technology, a lot of that stuff. But there are the small little things that we have to have, consumables and all the little things that we need to have in the classrooms to support Alder Creek, the mops and the brooms and those kind of things that you don't think of, but you more or less when you buy a new refrigerator and you need to go get mayonnaise and ketchup, right? You got to buy all the kind of those important items, and so we need to allocate for that, and so that's in the budget. So that kind of breaks down, and then you see the reserve for economic 3% is 9.5 million. What you don't see is a set aside for future district uncertainties. Normally we have that as kind of a catch-all when we don't have a specific purpose for the reserve dollars, and we just know that we have uncertainties that potentially that the board would prioritize. We put dollars there, but the truth is because of the deficit that is projected, there isn't funds available to allocate for that purpose at this time. So we are definitely spending down our unrestricted reserves as we are going along in this process. So multi-year projection. So looking at the revenue side, you see the current year. You see in 24-25 and 25-26 really nice COLAs, 3.94 and 3.29. I had someone tell me, oh, it's only 3.94, and I had to laugh because that would be considered a super COLA a few years ago. People have forgot that we used to have 0 or 1% for COLAs for many years. So good COLA. You see our unduplicated pupil count. That number, hopefully we'll continue to grow that or keep that stable around 37% or if not more. LCFF enrollment, you see that it's slight enrollment increase, but we do project attendance to enrollment to go up to 95%. So that does help with the funded ADA. You can see 200 ADA increase in 24-25 and then another 60 in 25-26. And that's what really funds the LCFF money. So you see $12 million and $8 million. If those COLAs go away though, all of that additional dollar pretty much goes away with it, other than the increased ADA. So we are dependent upon the state funding those COLAs to make those things happen. You see other revenues adjusting. Those are really adjusting for one-time items or for other purposes. On the expenditures continue to go up, I should say, because of step and column assumptions on certificate classified. Other services, book supplies, all of those, we pull out the one-time items. I'm not overly aggressive in projecting growth in things like utilities and supplies because it's very variable. It does go up, but the truth is there's a lot of pieces when you're talking about a $300 million budget. And to be able to just say it goes up 2% here and 1% down here, it's not very realistic. So just be consistent with it. I pretty much pull out one-time items and keep those other areas pretty much flat unless we know of a particular cost that's going up or something significant that needs to be identified. You do see that PERS rate is going up in the next 2 years as well, another 1%, another 0.6. STRS at this point is still flat, which we hope continues to be that way. When you bring all of those pieces together, you see that we do show in 24-25 a deficit, but it drops dramatically. That's because we see that COLA, we see that increased revenue. We hopefully don't see COLAs being removed or other issues, and we see enrollment growth. Because of that, we see additional revenues, expenditures relatively being calm because we only show step and column and a small PERS increase. And so that more or less gets us back close to break even. And then in 25-26, you actually see us in the black there. But there are a lot of questions about this multi-year with regards to fully funding of the COLA and the state's ability to take care of those things. So. Next slide here is a summary of other funds. So I only provide this normally at adopted budget. It just shares the other programs. I do have charter school, Fund 09. Right now we are projecting enrollment at 160 students. At that number, technically, we made the budget balance at this point because we're hoping for growth in the enrollment number. But there is a strong likelihood if the enrollment does not continue to grow there, that potentially the charter school will have a deficit and may need to use some of their ending fund balance. We're going to keep a monitor on that one. You see adult ed, child development programs, cafeteria. That is one program that is very robust right now. With universal meals, we are seeing a significant participation increase there. And so we are seeing additional revenues that will allow us to hopefully do some upgrade of some of our kitchen facilities and some of the equipment as well. And then hopefully we can get fully staffed for cafeteria. And then you can see the deferred maintenance building funds. Those are the facility-related accounts. Those are all combined in the one. A lot of activity in funds 21 through 40. That's all related to Alder Creek and then modernization projects with the bond dollars that we have outstanding for our Folsom and SFID 3, or SFID 3, 4, and 5 that are outstanding. And then the last one is student care. So in closing, we've talked, I think, ad nauseum about the state budget and the concerns that we have with that. I think really what we can do as a district that we have control over is try to continue to increase enrollment and improve attendance. That would be the biggest driver that we can have control over when it comes to the revenue side. On the expenditure side, we obviously need to continue to monitor programs and service. You can see we have a deficit. We hopefully can get ourselves out of that. We have to here in the next few years, otherwise we will deplete our reserves. And we will need those reserves if the state cannot fund that COLA. So we can go very quickly upside down if those COLAs are cut or eliminated. So we do have to monitor that at all times. So next big timeline is the June 15th. That's when the governor will realistically receive the budget from the legislature. And then he normally signs it sometime after that. What will happen though is they'll got a couple of bills that will be the budget bills, and they'll sign them more or less blank, and then they'll finalize the legislation afterwards. So we may not know the final details until August, September, October-ish. And so a lot of it may still be up in the air. We do have our Budget Advisory Committee meetings scheduled for next year. You can see the dates there. And then timeline for the budget cycle for first interim, second interim, and all the other stuff. So, questions?
Questions from the board?
Yes,
Board
Mr.
member,
President.
Yeah, Board Member Clark.
Sean, thank you for that presentation. I left one thing out. I know I asked you for a breakdown of the professional development conferences. Is it possible the board can get a breakdown of the jobs that have not been hired in the past 2 years? I'm just kind of curious to see what that looks like, and if they haven't been hired, why do we still include those into our projections? So it's just a curiosity thing for me.
Don, you have a question? Yeah.
Can we be more specific on that request? You want a position that was unfilled for a complete 2-year cycle?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That
not every vacancy we've had over 2 years. Because, for example, in the routine personal action form that you approved today, if you look at it, that form reflects a point in time when there were 250 vacancies filled.
Right.
And so when you take a person, for example, that moves from a yard duty position, for example, to an instructional aid position, when HR is processing that, if that report is pulled in that moment, it shows 2 vacancies, even though one of those vacancies is filled. So if you want to see positions that have remained closed, that's a very different report than if I'm going to go point in time through 2 years and show every vacancy that occurred over 2 years.
How can I say this? I think I'm asking for positions that are included in our budget that are still there that we haven't hired for.
Okay. For the last
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that would be an interesting to see.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to get up and make a comment? How about online? All right, back to the board. So we don't have this, there's no action item on this today. There is?
No, you're correct.
No, okay.
All right. So shaking, I'm correct. You're correct. At the next board meeting, we were required to have at a separate meeting, the public hearing. So LCAP will be next, and then both of those will be approved at the next board meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, seeing that there's no other questions and no public comment, we will close this hearing, and then we will open the next hearing. The next hearing is on public hearing on local control and accountability plan, LCAP, for 2023-2024. Superintendent.
Yes, and the LCAP follows a similar pattern as our budget. We do a public hearing in one meeting, and then the following meeting is the adoption of the LCAP. And the LCAP is the 3-year plan that reflects how we are spending the supplemental dollars, making sure that they're going to the students that generate those dollars, but to initiate the actions for the following year, we're required, per the requirements of putting together an LCAP, to engage our stakeholders. And, to do that, we have held very intentional meetings with 10 different stakeholder groups, including our student advisory board, several different parent groups, our employee groups, budget advisory, and with the information, we share with our information, what our data says in those areas, what the budgets have been in supporting the 8 state priorities. And through that process, we're doing strategic planning for the next year, gathering feedback and looking at how the data is changing over time. And as a result of those different stakeholder meetings that we've held this year, we've seen certain themes arise from the surveys that we've done or from the gathering that we've done. And we did the stakeholder forums similar to what we did before COVID, which was the what we call LCAP data walks. But the trends that we saw, either through the surveys or through the data walks and the feedback we received there, was desire for more academic support outside of the classroom, such as after-school tutoring, et cetera. Requests for increased mental health support post-pandemic return to regular in-person instruction. Identified the need for increased targeted support for our highest need student groups with a focus on foster youth, English learners, low-income students, and early intervention. So even though we've held the stakeholder meetings, this is an opportunity to still gather public input before we bring that final LCAP for 23-24 to the board. And again, this will be year 3 of a 3-year plan. So there are not major changes, but we want to make sure it reflects what the intent of the 8 state priorities are. And I do want to call out a thanks and appreciation to Ms. Cabrera and her team who help organize this effort and all the people that come together to give us the feedback. And then also Angela and her team with the survey collection and feedback that we put together and bring this forward. But at this time, we'll entertain any specific questions, or if Ms. Cabrera has anything else to add that I missed, we can answer those and before we do public.
Questions from the board? I do have a question on page 26 under parent summits. It indicates, and I guess it's been fairly consistent, at least back to 2020, 2021, that we have 3 parent summits for affinity groups. Do we have a parent summit for the general population that's not targeted to affinity groups?
Well, I would first answer with saying that all of the parent summits are open to all of our parents. We don't exclude anyone. And so we focus on the unduplicated students in our conversations or in our delivery of information as we're supporting the needs of the LCAP and the supplemental dollars. But all parents and community members are included and invited to our parent summits.
So then how do we, why do we describe it as 3 meetings with affinity groups? Is it just marketed more to affinity groups, or?
Well, and I think that I'll be very clear. That was language used in the time going back to years where we were intentionally focused on our African American families, our Asian American families, our Latino Hispanic families, to really intentionally seek their voice or their concerns or any comments that they had. There had been some need to reach out to them and focus, but yet I do want to stress all parent summits are open to all of our parents. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's advertised that way?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Board Member Clark, did you have any questions on the LCAP?
No.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, all right. That's the only question I have. Let's open it up to the public. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this agenda item? How about online? Nope. All right, back to the board. Unless there's any other questions or comments, we will close the public hearing. All right. we will close the public hearing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, that was a little faster than the last public hearing. All right, next agenda item is agenda item 12, discussion action items. The first one is approve high school girls flag football. Superintendent.
So we have a new sport that has been adopted by our CIF area, and we have 3 high schools that are very interested in offering girls flag football. And its first rollout of the seasons will be in the 23-24 school year. And as we know, our high schools are in different leagues. So 2 of our schools, Folsom High and Vista Del Lago, would be able to start up in their leagues that they're in for the 23-24 year. Cordova High would also start this year. However, they would have to participate as an independent league. And I'll ask Mr. Maroon to give a little more background as to why it's a little bit different than our other 2 high schools. But the intention is to go full board the 24-25 year, but they are going to gear up for it in 23-24.
Thank you, Dr. Kaligian. Folsom High is currently in the Sierra Foothill League, and that's not really going to change after realignment in the 24-25 school year. That's when the new cycle of realignment takes place. So as a result, their league adopted moving forward with having flag football for their fall season coming up, which makes sense, obviously, for them. Vista is moving from the Capital Athletic League into the CVC in the 24-25 school year, relatively with the same group of teams, with the exception of some changes. About 3 teams are going to be added to their Cal League currently. And they've adopted saying they would like to start it sooner, as soon as possible as well. Cordova's in the Greater Sacramento League. That is really being reshuffled for the realignment in 24-25. As a result, the league felt next year's being their last year as a league, they didn't want to add anything new to their repertoire per se. So Cordova High School did a survey of the students, found out how many kids are interested. I think I sent you an email saying they've got about 22 kids, I think, or 26 kids that are currently interested. They have had Powder Puff in the past, and you remember that. So they already have kids who are interested in doing it. So this same group of kids said, hey, yeah, we want to do this. So the athletic director and the coaches there felt like we'd like to move forward with this and get them into an independent league. Currently, the way that the bylaws are written, they can have up to 28 contacts, in other words, 28 games throughout the course of the season. But each of the leagues has adopted a 10-game max to make it more doable for them, especially as they start up and kind of see how this is going to play out, so to speak. The facilities, as far as the dimensions of the fields and so forth, are smaller. It's a 7-on-7, basically. It's not 11-on-11. They're not wearing, full pads and so forth, obviously, as flag football. So the cost of equipment is a little bit, less expensive. But it gives Cordova an opportunity to get themselves into that and prepare for the following league that they're going to get into, which is the Metro. And the Metro is a Division II league. They're moving out of D4 league into a D2 league. They want to use next year as a preparation for that.
Questions from the board?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Peter, because I was a little confused about that, especially with the Sierra Sierra League and everything. But so the girls will be in an open league this year, right? So they'll play open. The following year, you're saying that they'll be moved into Metro League. Now, will that be in alignment with the boys' athletics too? The boys will be moving into Metro as well?
Well, the entire school will be moving into the Metro League, yeah.
Scary. That is, okay.
I mean, Cordova is at the size where it's a D2 school.
Yeah.
And, we've had challenges with the Greater Sacramento League because they don't have the breadth of programs, so they don't offer as many levels, freshman, JV, varsity.
Right.
As a result, it's limiting our ability to provide those opportunities for our kids. So this moving into the Metro will give us that breadth of programs and levels to allow more kids participating in athletics.
Okay, is that a decision that the CIF decided to do, move Cordova into the Metro League?
So the Sac Joaquin section, our section that we're in,
right,
went through a process of realignment. They go through it every 4 years typically. During COVID year, they held off, kept it for 2 years. So we've been in with the Greater Sacramento League now for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Next year will be our 6th year. So moving into 24-25, they've realigned the leagues. They look at 3 different things. One is they look at the competitive equity They look at the level of the participation of levels that they have at sports, and then look at the school size, the demographics of the school. And that's how they determine that. So the athletic director, J.P. Dulliver, and I attended all their meetings. We advocated for what we felt was the best way. But, there's always a give and take when it comes to those realignments. They tend to be a challenge. It's not easy when you've got 200 schools that you're trying to figure out where they all go.
Right. Yeah, I just have concerns about that Metro League and moving those kids from Cordova into that league. But, okay.
Yeah, if we want to compete, you got to play with the teams that are equitable, right? So, that league will include Kennedy, McClatchy, Grant High School. It will include Antelope and West Park. So it'll give us an opportunity to compete with teams that are similar in size as far as demographics of schools and allow us to provide freshman level sports, which we haven't been able to do in the last 6 years.
Yeah, my concern is that we're trying to rebuild Cordova. And I mean, the decision's already made. We can't change it. Yeah. But when you throw them in the mix with the Antelopes and Grants of the world, I don't know how discouraging that's going to be for those kids. And that's my concern. But,
right.
We can talk high school sports all day long, but I'm just sharing my opinion with that.
Yeah, I mean, all that came into our process of how we deliberated with the section and, made our request. Part of the challenge is right now is Cordova is dominating in the Greater Sacramento League. And then we get into the section playoffs and we're not able to compete. Right. We're playing in a D4 league. We're a D2 school, and then we're having to compete against D2 schools in the playoffs.
Well, I can see that, Peter, especially with baseball, basketball. Maybe I'm just thinking more about football and how that program is basically rebuilding. I mean, again, we've had, in the past 6 years, we've had, 4 coaches? So
right.
That's just my thought.
Well, I think we're definitely moving in the right direction with some of the changes that we made.
And
I think the kids are going to have one more year of the GSL to kind of get their, feet under them, so to speak, and then really develop that program in the following year. We're going to take our lumps like anybody else, but we got to play with the teams that we can compete with.
Okay.
Okay.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah, please.
Is this a fall sport?
It will be a fall sport.
Facilities, where will they be practicing?
So
How will
we'll
that
work
be?
with our partners in the communities to make sure that's available. Right now, the way that it's lining up, it would be on a Thursday night backed up with freshman football. And that way we can utilize the same officials and the same facilities and reduce the support staff that we need for multiple sports having it at the same time. So it would be on the stadium, just like the high school football teams are. Practice facilities may be a little more of a challenge, especially at Folsom High, but we'll work with the city to provide some facilities that are available to us. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, I have a question regarding facilities. So you mentioned that the dimensions of the field, because it's a 7-on-7, is going to be smaller. Does that mean we're going to spray yet another set of lines on all of our football fields?
Not necessarily. They can use the down markers to reduce the field itself. It's basically an 80-yard field. So they're going to reduce the end zones into basically those, the 210 signs inside the 20-yard lines, and then play from the 30 to 30, basically. It's about a 60-yard field.
Okay.
I don't think we're gonna need to spray.
Between the soccer and the football lines, I'm
And
already
lacrosse.
and lacrosse lines, it's hard to keep track.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I think we can definitely do that with using yard markers or cones to measure off the areas.
Okay. All right. And then just out of curiosity, how many single gender sports do we still have left? So like football, there wasn't a comparison for the girls, but now we'll have the flag football. What other sports are out there that are single gender?
Volleyball.
No, there's boys and girls volleyball.
Yeah.
So I was gonna, there's a single sports per se, but you can play either one. The majority of them have gone to co-ed if they don't offer. I mean, obviously, if you have a female that wants to participate in high school football, they can.
Right.
We don't, restrict that. But football, I think, would be the only one, to be honest with you, when you think of it that way, because we have tennis, wrestling is co-ed, track and field is co-ed, lacrosse,
Cheerleading, co-ed.
Cheerleading is co-ed, yeah. Football, I think, would be the only one, but again, that's a co-ed sport. It's not an individual sport. If we have females that want to come out, and we've had those in the past.
Yeah.
I think Cordova had 4 young ladies at one time, so, yeah.
The only reason why I was asking was because of the second sentence in the rationale that says providing girls flag football teams would be another step in promoting gender equity in team sports opportunities for girls. It sounds like once this is done, it's on par, correct?
Well, for me, it was, the reason why I put that in there is because we're offering yet more female opportunities than we have in the past. That are more female, oriented. And that's one of the things is when we look at our demographics currently of participation, of athletes participating, we're typically about, 7 to 10% higher on the male end than the female end.
Right.
Giving this opportunity for a girls flag football will help to bring that up to make it more equitable.
Right. I agree. But so once this is done, we should be where we need to be, right? In parity.
I'll agree to disagree because I'm sure something else will come down the line.
Well, because my point is there is no other single gender sports out there after it. Okay. All right. That's all the questions I have. We'll open to public comment. Anybody online? All right, back to the board. This is an action item, so unless there's any further comments, is there a motion by the board?
I'll move it.
Motion by Board Member Clark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Board Member Srivastava. Superintendent, will you take the roll, please?
Ms. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
All right. Next agenda item is approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 2023-2024 school year. Superintendent.
Yes, this is a routine action item that we bring to the board each year as we're planning staffing for the following year. And we expect that our need for emergency credentials will continue. And the folks that are applying for these have to apply for certain emergency permits that meet the Ed Code requirements. So we actually have 3 areas that we have had to hire the emergency permits, and that's in special education. Also for CLAD certified, which is English Learner Authorization, CTE courses such as drama, yearbook, digital design, and driver's ed and training. So those are the areas that we've needed to fill various areas that with the emergency permits. But as you look at the form that's attached to this item, what we anticipate right now for next year is 5 CLAD emergency permit teachers and 1 resource specialist.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Can I just ask, those teachers that are not yet CLAD certified, because all current credentials come with that. So is there like a timeline parameter for them to become CLAD certified?
It's a good question. Typically, they're out-of-state teachers who are coming to California. So
Got it.
we're anticipating hiring about 5 teachers from out of state.
Okay.
So we'll typically get it in the first year.
Okay.
Other questions? All right. Any questions from the public? Online? All right, back to the board. Unless there's any other questions or comments, is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Board Member Clark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Lofthouse. Superintendent?
Ms. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse? Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
All right, item C, approve certificated assignments under a provisional internship permit for the 2023-2024 school year. Superintendent.
Yes, this is also a routine action that we bring to the board if we are applying for any teachers under a provisional internship permit or a PIP. And right now, we have 1 teacher that would qualify, and this does need governing board approval. The teacher that we are looking at that qualifies for this would become intern eligible for 23-24. So in that time, she would be on this PIP. It's Megan Gibson, special ed moderate severe teacher, Folsom High School. She's completed her pre-service, will be enrolled in the UMass Global Extensive Support Needs Intern Program, and she meets the subject matter requirement. And she has committed to this assignment, which is also part of the agreement that we have to have with the individual before we bring it to the board. So with that, we would ask board's approval.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Public, online, back to the board. Unless there's any further discussion, is there a motion?
I'll motion.
Motion by Board Member Lofthouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Hui. Superintendent.
Yes. Ms. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, that takes us to agenda item 13, which is discussion. The first item is A, which is community schools grant update. Superintendent.
Well, this is a very exciting discussion item. We gave you the great news, I think, at our last meeting. We had just heard from the State Board of Ed approving 6 of our schools for Community Schools Grant. And again, I want to recognize and thank Ms. Hazarian, Ms. Carla Gaiman Davis, Dr. Peace, Ms. Cabrera, our curriculum instruction team. It really has been a team effort, and community schools is a team and community effort. So we're going to hear an update of what we can expect now as we're getting ready to implement for the next year. So welcome, Carla.
Good evening, Dr. Kaligian and board. Thank you. All right. To just revisit the foundation of community schools. Community schools are a mindset, not necessarily a grant, though grants do help to accelerate the work. Community schools are based on 4 pillars: expanded enriched learning, integrated student supports, collaborative leadership and decision-making, and family engagement. And so when all 4 of these pillars are in place, that's where we really see a community school solid. And when those things are all happening, it leads to stronger relationships, a whole child focus, stronger staffing and partnerships, teaching and learning, and teams and systems. So we applied for grants in March, and on May 18th, as Dr. Kaligian mentioned, we were awarded 6 of the 7 schools grants that we applied for: Cordova Meadows Elementary, Cordova Villa Elementary, Kinney High School, Mills Middle School, Williams Elementary School, and White Rock Elementary. Unfortunately, Cordova High was not awarded a grant. The state does look for over 80% unduplicated pupil percentages on seabeds, and using the 2021 data, there was 57% for Cordova High School. We already are seeing in this past year in 2022 that increase of 72%, and we are already working as teams to make sure that we get connected to every family so that we can show the amount that we need to qualify. So we will be applying for Cordova High School again next year. Really wanted to say a big thank you to you as a board for your full support, to our executive cabinet members, and also our leadership team, and their names are listed here, who often stayed late into the after-school hours and wrote job descriptions and really connected the pieces of what we're doing as a district and focused on what it means to be a community school and beginning to really understand that work and continue forward. So we're thankful to so many people, and we look forward to more. Kate's going to share with you some of our expenditures and then some of our next steps.
Thank you, Carla. All right, so this is the breakdown of supports that we're expecting at the different schools that did receive funding. We had all of our job descriptions ready to go by the time we learned of our grant awards, so we've already hired our student support specialists. We interviewed today for a Mills Community School Facilitator 2. We have interviews next week for the other 3 sites for the community school facilitators, number 1. And then also behavior specialists, the positions will be closing tomorrow. So we feel confident that we'll have everybody in place by the time staff returns in August. Also, you'll see on the far right-hand column the different partnerships that we were funded for. So Project Optimism is a youth mentoring program that really focuses on bringing diverse youth mentors into elementary schools. So that'll feed very nicely into Improve Your Tomorrows at Mills, Mitchell, and then at Cordova. UC Davis has an in-home parent education support program working with parents that have students with big behavior needs to help them on behavior modification. And then Superior Sports is a partnership to bring structured recess activities to our elementary school sites for our youngest learners. For our secondary schools, we are already seeing programs in place to be able to provide free sports physicals through our partnership through UC Davis. We did write in some additional time for school nurses in our district to help support that work. We are going to be piloting a first that I've heard of in our county, which is chemical and drug abuse counseling interns working in our schools, specifically in our secondary schools, to support our young people that are struggling with drug and alcohol use. And we did hire our new community school coordinator, Carla, who starts that position July 1. The next steps for us, because Cordova wasn't funded, we do need to reduce some of our central budget that we had allocated. And so we're in the process of doing that. We should have all of our positions hired before people scatter to the summer winds. We are in the process of getting our contracts in place. We will be working on onboarding and team building with our new staff in early August, working on that professional development plan. And then we also are having an eye on sustainability now. So we know that this funding is for 5 years. And it'll take a while to get things built and going, and we want to make sure we have a plan for continuing it past the life of the grant. So cohort 2 schools, these are the schools that we'll be writing for next spring. We are hearing from CDE that there will be 2 more rounds, but with the state budget and what Sean was saying, we for sure want to get all of our schools in the next round. We are waiting to hear about Cordova Lane Center and if they'd be eligible to apply. We think that they are eligible, but need to get that confirmation. And whether or not these schools get funded or not, we are still working on that system of care throughout all Rancho Cordova schools. So no matter where a family lands, they can get support. And we asked our leadership group to brainstorm what does success for community schools look like. So 5 years from now, what will be different in Rancho Cordova schools? And the things that we heard were improved attendance, that we're seeing a reduction in extreme behaviors, that we have youth more engaged in owning their own learning and being excited about their future, that we're bringing more community people into our schools as volunteers, that we have more parents actively participating in school site council and ELAC, and even coming to board meetings like this and asking for what they need for their young people. And we would love to hear from the board what your hopes and dreams are. What do you think success would be for Rancho Cordova schools in the next 5 years? So our next step, we really want to create this integrated system of support. We will be using improvement science to guide our implementation. We are going to be working on building the capacity of our staff and of our families to be able to use their voice and help partner together to create sustainable change. And we'll really be looking at what interventions do we want to expand as we're going forward, which ones need to be adapted, and are there practices that we've done historically that are just not getting us the results that we need to for our students, and we're letting some of those go. And we do believe in improvement science that we are going to learn most from the people closest to the work, and that means that we listen to our staff and our families and our youth, and that they're actively a part of building this new structure in Rancho Cordova. So thank you so much for letting us update you tonight, and we're open for questions.
Questions from the board?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Clark.
Thank you both for that presentation. Just have a few questions. I know these are going to be in the Cordova schools, and I was looking at your leadership team. Just out of curiosity, how come we don't have any teachers on there?
We actually do have representatives from FCEA on there,
Okay.
and as we expand the structure, the school site councils will be the structures at the school sites that are the decision makers and helping to make sure the grants being implemented well at their school sites.
But I mean like a teacher from Cordova Meadows, Cordova Villa, or I mean kind of expanding that a little bit. I'm just wondering how come we didn't have that on there.
during this planning year, we were focused on 12 different schools.
Right.
And so being able to have representation from all of those schools would be challenging. So Carla did the footwork of going out to the school sites and working with staffs directly to get their input. As we're moving forward in our next phase, we are definitely going to be having more teacher, more youth, more parent engagement in the process.
Awesome. And I love the idea with UCD, PC care. Just a little clarification on that. Is that kind of like they're going into the homes? How often are they going into the homes?
It's a totally voluntary program. Parents can self-refer or they can allow us to refer. They have clinicians that speak Spanish as well as English, and they go into the home for 7 weeks and work with the parent on behavior modification in the home. And then they do follow-up with the teacher to see if we're seeing any improvement in the classroom as a result of the intervention, and they do ongoing follow-up with the parents.
So it would be kind of like a home visitor type thing.
Yes, and parents, if parents prefer to meet at the school site to do the work, they definitely can. They can go down to UC Davis, but we know transportation is a barrier.
Right.
So most of our parents have been electing to have them come to their homes.
And the other question is, if at all, will they be preparing, let's say that they have like a 3 or 4 year old in the house, will they prepare them for like maybe a school readiness program to get them acclimated to going into, TK or kinder?
The model is based on working with one child in the home that is having the biggest challenges, but they do focus on the whole family system.
Perfect.
So I'd have to ask them if they're encouraging that, but it makes total sense. We have a meeting with FCCP next week to talk about training their home visitors in the PC care model through this project so that they can continue to expand those services.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions?
Just a couple questions. For one, and I'm not sure if this would be something you guys would answer, but I'm curious what accounts for such a large jump in UPP for Cordova High in the last 2 years?
Yes. So the fall, when we came back from school closure, was a very hectic time. And the focus really was on covering classes and not as much on the outreach to families. Last year, Sean did a great job helping, and Elena helping us develop a system of more family outreach. And Elena and Taylene did an amazing job reaching out to every family that they could get a hold of. And really what that 72% reflects is what is reality. That low number, the low 50s number, was not reality, but that was the year that the state chose to use for funding this round of grants.
Yeah. Did you see with any of the other schools chosen, were there any schools that were under 80%?
Yes. So the lowest that CDE went was 68%. So, when I look at a school like Navigator, I'm not so sure that they will make it up to that criteria, but there's not a reason why that mindset can't still be the mindset. And when we're approaching a partner and maybe they're going to be working at Mills, we have an eye on the whole system. And so it's not just that one school, it's that whole system. So a family should be able to land anywhere within Rancho Cordova and access supports.
Great. And just a couple more. I too love this UC Davis program. It sounds really exciting. I notice it is only in our elementary schools. Do they not do any work with the secondary students?
No, they don't. Their focus is 2-year-olds to 10-year-olds.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then with the UC Davis program, are they able to bill Medi-Cal if the family has Medi-Cal, or is that something that we pay UC Davis for the service?
So they used COVID dollars initially for the first pilot of this, where we had a year of services with no expense. Jackie Wise and ECE was able to give some money this spring to continue it because we needed a bridge until we got to the community schools. UC Davis is very expensive to partner with for services. So that's our hope with FCCP, that if we can train folks in the Birth and Beyond program in the model, then they can use that. And FCCP is already a trusted partner within the community.
Right. So, yeah, we would potentially keep using a similar service, just maybe not with UC Davis.
Possibly.
Okay.
We love UC Davis.
Yeah.
We love UC Davis for lots of things, but it is a pricey price tag to partner with them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions?
I just have a couple questions. In terms of mindset, how are we really lifting up all of the partners in that. So while I see the community partners a lot, and I think that there's been some rumblings of teachers kind of like, we're told we're doing this, where they're not feeling that they've really gotten a chance to really know what this means. And so what is the plan to ensure teachers are, one, bought in, because we can't, just even one teacher that's not bought into this model will kind of destruct that whole system. So how are we making sure that they are well-trained and prepared and feel comfortable with this coming into their school and not feeling like it's something new?
I know you're ready to jump in, but I will just say it is something new.
Or something more. I should say more.
Yeah, something more.
That is more.
Yeah, we hope that so every school has a full-time person dedicated to support this work, that as we're able to start helping teachers have more tools to be able to meet the needs of their students, that'll be an important part. Hiring really great people, people that are from the community, people that speak the different languages in our community is going to be a priority. And then we are going to make sure to be in all school site council meetings. We will be dividing and conquering, as well as our folks that we've hired to be in there and do the work. The hard part on the training is staff meetings are once a month, and relationship is what changes mindset more than a presentation, as much as we love our presentations. So I think we're going to have a multi-pronged effort. We really want to talk about how to have regular communication, where we have like a quarterly newsletter that goes out just to highlight what's going on. I think people are so busy in their own work, it's really hard to see the change. And so we need to figure out ways to amplify that. We're working really closely with FCEA. They've been fantastic partners in this. We have an MOU signed with them around this work, and we'll be leaning on them too to, make sure you're communicating to your members this important work. Any other ideas?
I'm really excited to see them come to fruition. So.
Yeah, we're excited too.
I had another question. When you brought up FCCP, Folsom Cordova Community Partnership, now are you going to provide training for them, for their home visitors?
So UC Davis provides that for free.
Okay.
To local nonprofits. So we don't think we'll need to use any of our grant funds. So the thought is, while we're paying UC Davis to help supplement, it doesn't pay for the whole cost of the program.
Right.
We're putting some money towards that. Their workers are out doing that work while they're training staff with FCCP. So we can eventually lower the contract with UC Davis as FCCP becomes more skilled in the work.
Well, they would probably need more staff too, because I know that they don't have that many home visitors, maybe 3 or 4 max, but I was just curious.
Yeah, we're gonna have to build this as we go. So we'll adjust and we'll adapt.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Other questions? I had just a couple. So the community school model, is it fair to say it's to support the whole family, not necessarily the child? It could be adult programs to support the adults in the family as well.
Mm-hmm. So part of what we wrote into the grant is bringing back adult ESL classes on our elementary school sites. That was something that was happening pre-pandemic. We're partnering with Elena to bring PK, which is a parent education program. So yes, anything that could help support a family to be stronger, where we can increase school stability too. If we can help families be stronger and more connected to their local school, they won't need to leave, or we can provide supports for them if they're struggling with housing so that we can increase stability. But children are directly impacted by how their parents are doing. So it's an interconnected cycle, and we need to support everybody in that family.
So is it also fair to say that, our goal is to have our facilities be vibrant, active facilities, as many hours as possible we could get in the day?
So the vision from the state is that schools are the hub of wellness and their school sites, which works really well with SCOE because that's their focus too. So next year we're increasing from 4 clinicians to 6 clinicians in our school, and they'll be adding family navigators and other support services. So the idea is that a family should just be able to walk to their local school to get what they need.
So how would we be addressing, let's say, some services or organizations that can provide support services that would like to utilize one of the facilities? Are we charging them rent?
Right now, we would follow what our normal partnership guidelines are. But if an organization says that that's a barrier to them, then we sit down and we have a conversation. And what can we do to remove that barrier? I have not gotten deeply into the facilities use. I'd have to lean on Matt and his team to know if that is a barrier. So that'll be something as we're building partnerships, we will have to address that if that's a challenge. The goal of the grant is to have vibrant after-school programs, which Marie does a great job organizing those, but also a lot of programs available during the summer. And so if facilities use is a challenge, then we'll have to address that.
I think it would be, well, I'm assuming, we can afford it, but, if it's a nonprofit that's in the community, I would love for us to at least explore the possibility of providing it rent free. For example, I'll use a couple examples. Let's say, there are organizations out there like AA, NA, Al-Anon, Alateen. Those are great service or nonprofits that provide a great service to the community. In the case of Alateen, it actually would be the student population. Al-Anon would be the whole family population. I would hope that AA and NA would be more the older folks, but you can never make that assumption either. But getting those types of programs into a community school, is that something that we would entertain? Because I know some of those organizations currently rent their current facility, and if they were to be provided at no charge, we might be able to attract even more organizations similar to that.
Yeah, that is not an organization that we've partnered with yet, so I don't know if they'd want to partner in schools. Oftentimes they partner in churches for their locations.
Right.
Yeah, so I think we're going to have a new frontier of partnerships that we're going to have to explore and see what the community is asking for, and that what barriers are there.
Okay. Well, it's exciting, needless to say, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, it could be as expansive as our imagination can take it to be. And yeah, well, I look forward to see how this program develops. And also, it's not to say just because we got this grant funding for these Title I schools, there's no reason why hypothetically we can't expand the community school model to every single one of our schools, right?
That's very true. And I think these first 6 schools are going to be the model for our district, and we'll learn from that for the next cohort. And then after that, or consecutively with that, we look at those schools that aren't Title I, but adopting that mindset. We're going to learn a lot, I think, in this next year.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, let's see. It is a discussion item, but I will open it to public comment. Any members of the public online? Oh, we do have someone online. Excellent. Sarah, welcome.
Oh, good evening. I just wanted to mention, Kara, thank you for mentioning how staff was feeling about community schools. I know many of us have reached out and we were told we were doing this and have an understanding but don't know what it's going to look like. We would like that all staff and teachers be in the communication when we're rolling this out for next year. I think it's going to be a great thing for our Rancho schools and everything else. But since it's a 5-year budget money grant, what happens after 5 years? Are we going to have to reapply for money, or is this going to be taken out of the budget? I'm just worried that we're going to get some really great things and then not have it supported after the end of the 5 years. So thank you, Kara, for mentioning how staff feels and bringing that to everybody's attention.
All right, thank you. Any others? Okay. If there's no further discussion, again, it's just for discussion, no action. We will move on to item B, which is a first read of Board Bylaw BB 9100 Organization, BB 9220 Governing Board Elections, BB 9223 Filling Vacancies, BB 9320 Meetings and Notices, BB 9322 Agenda Meeting Materials, and BB 9323 Meeting Conduct. Superintendent, how do you want to approach this? You want to do it all together, or just have board members, if there's a particular one they want to talk about? Or
We've brought a couple of these forward earlier this year out of our own requests to review board bylaws, such as, the time that public gets to speak and not conceding your time to another person. So the changes that you see reflected in the green or the red reflect CSBA updates from their last update, which mostly aligns with change in legislation or new Senate bills. They do reference the different Senate bills that added some additional verbiage. So I would say if you have specific questions, we can go to that board bylaw. These were reviewed by our policy subcommittee on May 1st, so we did talk through them at that point, but happy to address any specifics of any of these.
Okay, well, why don't we just go down the line on this one? Just we'll start with the student board members. Do you have any questions on any of the policies? No questions. All right. Board member Lofthouse? No. Board member Clark? No. All right. Board member Hui? No, and I don't either. So, hey, that's great. Any member of the public? Online? All right. Then I guess we're done with the discussion.
Okay, and that'll come back as a consent item at the next meeting on June 15th.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds
thank
good.
you.
And that takes us to agenda item 14, information, PE credits for student athletes. Superintendent.
Yes, and this item was brought up by one of our board members to talk about, the possibility of granting PE credits if a student is participating in athletics outside of the school day. So I want to thank Mr. Maroon for putting together this information. It is an information item, but I know there were some questions, some follow-up questions. So I'm going to ask Mr. Maroon to come to the podium so we can address any of those questions from any of our board members.
I feel like I'm on the hot seat this week. Just kidding.
I think some of the questions, I can start off and then please jump in, with any others. To confirm, PE is not an A through G requirement. That's correct. And the next question, do you think it's possible for more students if they would sign up for athletics, if we offered PE credit for participation in school-sponsored sports? And I'm going to turn that one over to Mr. Maroon.
Yeah, I think it would definitely entice more students to participate in it, especially if they are, and I mean, let's be honest, high school kids are, PE sometimes gets to be tough for them. So if they got an option to go do something else, they are definitely going to take advantage of it. I don't know what those numbers would look like. My concern would be the flip side of that is if we have too many students coming out for non-cut sports, then is that going to force us to create some cut sports because of it? So that would be the only backlash of that. But I think definitely would entice more kids to participate in some kind of sport.
I'll jump in if that's okay, Dr. Clegan. So one of the things I always appreciate that you at least encourage me to do, Dr. Clegan, is think what need am I trying to meet with whatever is being brought up. Certainly one of the things would be more students being involved. And one of the reasons I asked for this as well is the demand on our students' time that are in after-school sports right now. In my own house, they're leaving for school at 8 o'clock. They're getting home at 6:30, having dinner, doing homework, so on and so forth. So that is a big question, is would this potentially reduce the time requirements or demands on our students if we were offering credits for after-school sports? Do you have any idea about what that might look like?
Yeah, I think it'd be an unintentional consequence of that. If we offered PE credit for after-school sports, think of it this way. Currently, the CIF's put a time limit on having after-school practices, 5 days a week plus games. And it's 18 to 20 hours on average. So now if you're taking away a class that's 1 hour a week or 1 hour a day for 5 days a week, that's 5 hours. And you're adding a new class in this place, so you still have those 5 hours, plus you're adding that 15 to 18 hours of practice time or game time. So to me, that would seem like the kids would be more out of the household than in the household in regards to that.
Yeah,
time management would definitely have to be a skill they acquire.
Yeah. When I do wonder if we'd actually have to add the extra class, if they're earning the credit itself, and they didn't have to take the PE class itself. And that's where I was wondering if the time requirement might change. I did want to also clarify, because it is a little bit confusing, the reading through the ed code.
Trust me, I know. It was written in 1976.
So most of it looks like, no, you can't really do this. And then there's this one paragraph, it's on page 16 of the presentation. It says, the governing board of a school district may exempt any four-year or senior high school pupil from attending courses on physical education if the pupil is engaged in a regular school-sponsored interscholastic athletic program carried on wholly or partially after regular school hours. It's a mouthful, but I think what that says is if this board did want to implement this, we are allowed to per ed code, is that correct?
Yeah. So with that, again, we're talking about an exemption. An exemption doesn't excuse the credit needed.
Correct.
It just says you can take time off to do something else.
Right.
You still have to make up the credit.
Right. So they could be exempted from taking PE for credit as a class.
Right.
If they were participating in sport, part of that exemption could be the board, let's just say, making a policy that if a student completes one season of a sport, they receive 5 units of PE credit, right? So that's how that would work practically.
Well, and so just so you're aware, I've contacted both the Department of Education and some of our gurus have come in and did our FPM monitoring audit, asking them, can you replace after-school athletics with PE credit? You can replace it with an elective credit, but I don't know that in ed code it specifies if you can give them PE credit. So I'm asking them, I'm waiting for their response for that.
So, and I know for me, a quick Google search brought up handfuls of schools that do currently offer this.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know how they do it. Fremont Union High School District, they get 5 credits per season after they have to take PE their freshman year, and then it's 5 credits per season completed after that.
Right.
I believe they have to get 20 credits total toward PE for their graduation requirements as well as ours. Carlsbad High School, same thing. St. Guido Union High School District, same thing. Oak Park Unified High School District, I believe, and one of those, I can't remember which, actually, they don't even require their freshmen to take it as long as they're in a sport.
Carlsbad, I think, is the one.
Okay, so there is a precedent, at least in California, that it is possible. It sounds like.
Right. I've reached out to all 4 of those districts to ask them, how are they doing it? Like, what are they doing that we're not aware of, or if they can give us some insight to that. I know that 2 of them are using contracts that they've created that a student must obey by in order to get that credit. I pulled up some copies of what they're doing. I'm waiting to get back information from their Department of Education or their district office finding out what are they doing. What I can tell you is that when we went through the federal program monitoring, that was one of the areas that they focused on is how are we assigning freshman and sophomore year PE credit? And who gets it and what are the courses? And there's the 8 standards that we must meet in order to get those. So what Ed Code says is that we have to offer those 8. It doesn't all have to be all of them at the same time. So in other words, we can do 4 one year and 4 the other year, or we can do 8 one year and then a little more intense on the second. And that's what our district's chosen to do. We do 8 of them on a lower individual level at the freshman level, and then we do more of a team level at the sophomore level, so that we're combining individual sport or individual ability versus team ability. So that's how we've divided up those 8 sections that we must cover. And we got dinged by CDE when we didn't have all 8 of them. We didn't have the aquatics unit in some of our schools, and we didn't have the self-defense unit in some of our schools. So I don't know how we're giving away PE credit if we're not meeting all 8 of those standards. That's why I've asked CDE to, is there something that we're missing that we don't know about, or is there a loophole somewhere in there that we missed?
Yeah, it is confusing. I mean, I believe there's schools my kids have competed against, even in their leagues, that offer the same thing, which does feel in a league like a bit of a
Disadvantage to us.
certainly.
Yeah.
As well as, I know you mentioned it might be extra work for the kid. I mean, I would love for students that I know that are involved in sports to be able to take other electives as well, because they are really fulfilling the requirements in terms of what we're asking for in those requirements. So it sounds like it's still pretty muddled.
Of those districts you mentioned, none of them are giving credit to team sports. Only cut sports are getting the individual credit. It's in their contracts. If you read their contract, it specifies these teams cannot participate, these teams can. So they're doing it that way. One of them had it in their graduation requirement, high school graduation requirement, that because if we're not offering it as a PE unit, then you can take it for elective after-school credit. So it differentiated how it was being offered. So for instance, football was not one of those that you can get credit for it. Team sports, like I said, basketball, volleyball, any cut sport basically was not in that list of you can take it for credit for that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm a little leery to go with one district, because all 4 of them are doing it somehow differently.
Right. Yeah, well, at least I don't know how the rest of the board feels, or if there's other questions. I mean, I'd love to keep.
I just had a question. I'm looking at Rockland. I mean, are they doing it under contract? I mean, how are they?
So Rockland's requirement is 3 years of PE.
Right.
So what they're saying is you got to take PE 1 and 2, like we have. But on your 3rd year, if you take 4 seasons of a sport, we'll count that as PE credit. But it comes in as elective credit for PE.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so you can't take, for instance, PE 1 and then do sports and replace that with PE 2. You have to do P1, P2, and then do the other stuff. That's how Rockland's doing it. So it's an additional requirement for their graduation. And remember, Rockland's on a 4x4 block.
Right. Okay.
So, but of the ones that we did look at around our surrounding area, Jesuit and St. Francis do not have to offer it. They can give them PE credit for doing after-school sports, but again, they're not held to CDE requirements the way we are.
Other questions? Actually, I have a question for Board Member Hui, if he's open to it.
Sure.
So what you're suggesting is if you could get five credits or 5 units for each sport, you could get up to the 20 units if you took 4 sports.
Correct.
Which would then qualify potentially if the information that Mr. Maroon is looking into pans out, someone who took 4 sports would be able to not have to take the PE classes.
Right.
Well,
They could take the PE class. but
What's
they would be
that?
required.
The first 2 years are we required delivered by a PE teacher?
Right, so would that mean hypothetically, would they have to take 2, in this hypothetical, 2 sports their freshman year and 2 sports their sophomore year, or could it be spread out 1 sport over all 4 years to qualify?
From what I could tell, the schools that are doing this, it's spread out. Most of them required a PE class freshman year.
Okay.
None of those schools that I mentioned required any sort of PE class anytime after that, as long as people were earning those units. I don't know practically how it works if it has to happen in a certain year, but I guess what I would suggest is if we do have student athletes, I think it would be worth continuing to explore the idea of allowing them credits for those sports, since really, ultimately, they are fulfilling the requirements that we're asking for, and because we can do this by an exemption by the board. So the picture's not clear yet. My recommendation would be that we keep looking at this.
I have a question, and maybe Jim, you might be the person that can answer this. PE has content standards, just like any other content. And so there is not a way, well, it would change the dynamics for sure of athletic practice if during an athletic practice for, say, track and field, because that's a non-cut sport, to actually implement the state standards to complete and receive units. So you cannot receive units for a class that does not fulfill the state standards.
That's where we're somewhat confused.
Okay.
Because when we're looking at other schools and other districts that seem to be doing this, what we were told was, number one, it had to meet all 8 standards. Like Mr. Maroon said, it can be done over a period of time, but all 8 have to be met. So how you would put those into a sport, some sports it would not align. One of the other big items was it had to be taught by a fully credentialed PE teacher. A lot of our sports have walk-on coaches who don't have credentials at all, not to mention PE. So those were 2 of the areas especially that we were really focused on in terms of how really would this work in terms of what we were held accountable for. Because like, again, Mr. Maroon said, one of the areas they really focused in on us was PE because of some of the things that we had done in the past, thinking that we were in compliance and we weren't, according to our auditor. And one of the things also that's kind of come up is this also could be simply that some of these schools have never been audited. I do know, I believe, a school down in Southern California that still offers PE credit for their ROTC program. And that, as far as we were told 10 years ago, that was not allowable. So there's just elements of this we still need, we need more time to explore, but there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah. I think where I get confused on it is this, Ed Code 51241, that there is an exemption. I mean, it's pretty black and white on the Ed Code, though it sounds like
But I
it's more
think an
confusing.
exemption is different than receiving units. So
Right.
somebody can be exempt from
Right.
taking a class, but they won't receive the units. So I'm also curious for the schools, do you have any times of when they implemented this at their schools? Is this something that they've done for a very long time and maybe it was like a grandfathered in sort of thing?
Right.
Before there was actually content standards for PE.
Well, 3 of these schools that were brought up, these school districts, are still offering independent PE study, which is, again, not allowed by CDE.
Yeah.
So one of the things that on slide 4 of the informational packet I provided, there is instruction versus activity. So after-school athletics will be an activity, not an instruction piece. So that's where the highly qualified credentialed teacher has to come in to provide that service. Under state frameworks, it currently says you can't give credit for activity. For instance, I'll give you some examples. We had some individual students that were doing ice skating, and they were driving all the way down to Fairfield because the ice rink's down there. So parents wanted to get them out of school early to get them down there to avoid the traffic so they can do their ice skating down there. And these are kids who are probably, Olympic bound. And that school district down there had an independent studies program. And I don't remember if you remember this or not, but we contacted them and said, hey, share with us what we don't know. And in the process, they found out they're out of compliance. So they had to eliminate their independent studies program that they were offering. So we had to notify our parent, can't do it. They can't even do it anymore. So doing that process.
I just feel like if this was a possibility, there would be far more than a handful of districts that do this, and it would be much more wide scale.
Yeah, and there may be far more than a handful of districts. That was literally a 2-minute Google search that came up with a handful.
Yeah.
I guess maybe the question I would want to ask the board is, if we think that this would be, if we didn't have the Ed Code, if we thought that this would be a good thing for our students, should we continue to look at it? And then we can figure out if we can actually make it work with the Ed Code. If we don't think it would be good for our students, it's certainly not worth continuing to look at.
Well, the reason why I like this, if it's possible, but I acknowledge the fact that it may not be possible, but if it is possible after research, the reason why I like this is because at some schools, such as Folsom High, which has less availability for credits than Vista del Lago and Cordova High, there's less opportunity for the students to take extracurricular or electives, academic electives. And even if it is an exemption, and they don't get units, but it's an exemption, that you just opened up 2 more classes, academic classes, that student could take at Folsom High that they otherwise would not be able to take. And I love that. So I'm 100%, let's look into it and see what we find out.
I will say that we're curious. We are curious just to find out, what, if somebody else is offering something, then, we would like to know at least how they're doing that. And if not, we might also like to call attention to the fact that it's not equitable or fair that some students are getting a benefit that actually is in violation of state law.
So again, I also want to caution us, this ed code was written in 1976. And at that time, for whatever reason they had different reasons. Obviously, there was a lot more funding available for athletics back then prior to, Prop 13 coming into play. And so schools were able to provide these opportunities. After Prop 13 and after the changes and modifications, just like ROP is no longer allowed, there is an exemption there for a student who wants to go take a driving class during school hours. There's an exemption for that. We're not obviously giving that exemption up. So those things were put in place back then for certain reasons that may not make sense to us today. But I definitely want to look into it and see if it is a possibility. It gives our students, opportunities, and we have a loophole within the system with the CIF. For instance, now that they're limiting us to 18 hours, if a student is taking a elective class for PE, say advanced conditioning, they got additional time to practice with their coach outside those 18 hours. It doesn't count because it's instructional minutes, right? So it's giving our teams an opportunity to provide that option for our kids. Most of our kids are going to take advantage of that versus go to take another class, especially if they want to master their craft or get better at what they're doing. So, there's going to be an adverse effect of whatever we do. I'll be happy to see, I'll wait to see what they come back with. Linda Wilkinson is the Department of Education's guru on this. She's the one that came out and audited us back in 2020 and 21 when we did the FPM. And again, this year when we went through FPM, we didn't have any of these findings. So we corrected those things back in 2021, so we didn't have that finding this year. So I'll be interested to see how they're doing it.
Yeah, well, it sounds great. It sounds like there's at least curiosity and interest to keep exploring this. So maybe if it works for the board, in the next month or two, or maybe, September, something like that, if we could have this come back to us just to see what we found out and if it's worth continuing to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you just look at Fremont Unified, they're offering classes in all kinds of categories that I don't know how they're doing it. They're doing PE soccer. That doesn't meet the 8 standards. There's no way to cover that. They're offering PE basketball. They're offering PE racket sport. How are you meeting the 8 standards for that? So, I don't want to give this information up to the state and let them figure it out for them, but at the same time, I want to know if there's a loophole, we definitely want to look into it.
We might have a whole bunch of school districts that are going to be very unhappy with us if...
That's what I'm afraid of.
You're going to have a lot of students very unhappy.
Just one other point too is let's say we find out for somehow that this is possible, it would also require some time for us to figure out on how to track it. Because it presents a bunch of challenges also in terms of, the way the school would have to keep track of what the students are doing. What happens if I'm injured during the season, or what happens if I just drop out? Well, now I'm halfway through the school year and I can't go back to make up the PE credit. I mean, there are definitely things that we've got to be really cognizant about.
Well, and I think another implication would be teachers and whether how that impact is for coaches who are not teachers. And if it's, we all say that we have highly qualified teachers, and that's what we are making sure that we have for our students. So I'm not saying that a coach is not highly qualified as a coach, but they are potentially not a highly qualified teacher to provide those. And that might be that caveat. Maybe every single one of their coaches is a teacher. Or that brings question for those coaches, are we paying them enough to coach if they're actually providing credit to these students? So. Right. There's a lot of follow-up questions for that, even if it is possible.
Yeah, to Dr. Huber's point, if for instance, let's use basketball. Basketball starts in October and it goes through February, so it's in between semesters. If a student doesn't sign up for PE in the beginning of the year in August because they're going to try out for basketball, then they don't make the team. Now what do we do with them? They've missed already a quarter of the semester, right? Because the sports are by season. It's a trimester season, if you think about it, where our semester season don't align with the seasons of sport. So it would create a challenge for us for those cut sports, especially in the winter, where you got boys and girls basketball, boys and girls soccer, and wrestling. Those teams would, I don't know how we would fix that or mend that issue as we got there. If the kids didn't make the team, then what do you do with them? And if you got a freshman who's got a free period, where do you send them in the middle of the day? Who's monitoring them?
Yeah. I think our track and field teams might all look like Sutter's track and field team.
Yeah.
300 students in them, which wouldn't be a bad thing.
Again, for the no-cut sports, not a big issue, but for the cut sports, it's going to create some challenges. Yeah. But we'll look into it.
Thanks for looking into it, and I'll be excited to hear what we find out.
So this will come back on a future agenda item?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can do it as discussion next time?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. Well, that takes us to the superintendent's report, item 15, superintendent.
Well, if you think back in the last week or so, we've graduated and promoted a lot of students throughout the district. So again, I want to congratulate all of our promotees from our 8th grade to high school and all of our high school graduates. And again, to Rhea and Rosio, both did a stellar job in their delivery of speeches and connecting with their peers, as did all the other student speakers. So great job. And thank you to all our staff who supported our students to cross this line. The first finish line of many more to come, I'm sure. I also want to congratulate Vista Del Lago again for earning the title of Model PLC School. As a PLC district, when we're saying we're implementing PLCs district-wide, we are committed to that work. And it really is a bright spot to see our schools shine in the eyes of the state and national recognition. And I think, again, it's first of many more to come. So congratulations. I also want to acknowledge and thank our CSEA and FCEA leadership teams for joining cabinet and management in our 2 days of outward mindset training. As Tracy mentioned, I think it gives us common understanding, common vocabulary and definitions that we use when we are having cordial conversations, but also when waters get a little bit rocky. How do we navigate that? And I think outward mindset helps us have a common language and some strategies to navigate that. So look forward to continuing to revisit those strategies. And then just another plug for our FCUSD Career Fair for our hoping to fill some more of these vacancies on June 12th. 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We're looking for part-time and full-time employees, so every opportunity we have to plug it, we will. We're going to have some media spots, too, coming up that will be able to do that. So that's my report. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Item 16, board member reports. We'll start with the student board members. Board member Srivastava.
No report tonight other than congratulations to all other students that graduated or promoted. And it was so great to see Vista with the Model PLC Awards. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Board member Perez.
No report to be made tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Board member Lofthouse.
I also wanted to start by saying congratulations to all of our class of 2023 graduates and promotees. While I miss filling the room with student athletes tonight, I'm glad they're enjoying summer vacation, and congrats to all of them anyways. And then also congratulations to Vista Del Lago. I've gone to many PLC conferences and trainings, and I always wished I could go visit one, and it's a huge accolade for PLCs in general. So congratulations again to everybody who put in all their hard work there. That's all.
All right. Board member Clark.
Yeah, again, congratulations to our student board members. You guys gave some stellar speeches. Rhea, I'm sorry I couldn't make it, but I watched it and it made me emotional. Yeah, so I just want to say congratulations to the class of 2023, our high schools and our middle schools on their promotions. I'm going to say this again, and I've been saying it for the past 7 years. We have to do something so our board can make it to at least all the high school graduations. There's only 3. I know there's some way that we can work that out. To our teachers out there, I just want to tell you, and I try to tell as many of you as I could the last week of school that I visited. It's summertime. Please take it easy. Please take care of you. That's more important. We need you next year. So hopefully you'll be able to relax and have a good summer. And I also look forward to the joint city council meeting, school board meeting on the 8th of this month. That's it.
All right. Board member Hui.
Yeah, well, Board Member Clark, I'll echo that. I'm curious to see what that meeting will be like. Looking forward to it. And just a congratulations to all the graduates. Proud of all of you. I know it was a different path potentially for everybody, but it was a really exciting day to see many people graduate. So enjoy your summer. All the students that are relaxing or working or continuing to do school, and looking forward to a little bit of hope that you are all looking forward to a little time off.
Thank you. As for my comments, I really appreciated the theme or the messaging that I was hearing in the students' speeches at Folsom High and Vista del Lago. And I don't know, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend Cordova High, but maybe the theme was there as well. But, there certainly was in the speeches, first of all, they were very emotional, but it was such a great message to the fellow students, which is essentially, you are not your grades. You are more than your grades. You value as a person, regardless of what your transcript says. And, that's a message that was powerful. And that a similar type of message was conveyed both at Folsom High and Vista del Lago. And I don't know if that was just coincidence or not. And honestly, I don't know if I really care if it was coincidence or not, because, I think both schools, and certainly I'm sure the same holds true for Cordova, but both Folsom and Vista, had some tragedies this past year with mental health issues. And, it's a great message for the students that are graduating and going many different directions, whether it's career, whether it's military, whether it's onto higher education. But it's also a phenomenal message for, the students who are in grades 9 through 12 next year. And if there's a way that we can reinforce that with the students in different ways, I think it would be great for, mental health purposes. I know that, it's not that it's not currently taking place. Principal Cadenhead at Folsom High, he has this weekly video update that he provides to the students and shares with the parents. And, he's always ends it, and I won't be able to quote it. If a Folsom High student was here, they'd be able to quote it. But it was this, essentially reminding students to, look at a book or read a book without pictures, and, tell your parents that you love them, and, to be, gosh, I should have written it down. But it's a great message that he shares with the students every single week. And, I think that it resonates, and I hope it resonates with all the students, because it's so true. And I can see, the inclination of some students to, being very competitive when it comes to academics and the pressure that could potentially create on students. And so anyway, I really appreciated that was an intentional or unintentional theme of the student speeches at graduation. So, and that's all I had to share for tonight. So, all right, that takes us to advanced planning. And the next board meeting is actually a unique board meeting, which was already mentioned, but we have a special joint board meeting between the FCUSD School Board, the City Council of Rancho Cordova, and the City Council of Folsom. As far as I know, this is the first time we've ever done this. I'm not even certain how many other school districts have done something similar to this, but it's obviously going to it requires it to be publicly noticed by all three entities because it is a public meeting. So.
Yes, And we did post the agenda today and send it to our counterparts at both city councils so we could get it out a week ahead of time.
Excellent, excellent. So that will be a very interesting meeting. We have also a special board study session meeting on a Saturday, but we have 2 of these a year. And that one's on June 10th, 2023. And then our final board meeting for the current school year will be on June 15th of 2023. You have the 12-month calendar there for your reference, and then suggested future agenda items. Does anybody have some additional agenda items they'd like to share or ask to be added to the list? Well, I have 2, so if there's consensus. And actually one, I think Board Member Clark will like, because Board Member Clark has been talking about this for 7 years, which is our graduation schedule. Rather than just simply reminding staff, it would be great if we could have separate graduations. Can we have an agenda item on the graduations, the 2024 graduation schedule, and discuss, what the conflicts are that prevent the comprehensive high schools from having unconflicted graduations? Obviously, one thing that kind of dawned on me just the other day is, we have Folsom High on, at least traditionally, it doesn't have to remain this way, on Thursday night. We have Vista del Lago and Cordova on Friday night. I know we had asked the question, well, could one be on Saturday? But we heard why that could be a problem for attendance and the like. But why couldn't one of them be Wednesday night, hypothetically? I don't know if there's any reason why it couldn't be. So, but anyway, I don't know if there's a consensus of the board to talk about, rather than just simple.
Always curious.
It's not necessarily a conversation I'm very interested in having. I think mostly it impacts this group right here, and not necessarily the families that are attending. So if we all want to talk about it, that's fine with me, but it's not something I think I would want to spend time with.
I agree with Mr. Hui on this. I think that knowing the back end of planning graduations and when they are there is an extensive thing that goes along with many, many schedules and finals and students on campus and having the promotions for middle schools also happening at the high schools. So there is a lot that goes into it. While I agree it would be fantastic to be able to attend all 3, I think that it's the 5 of us and the administration for the district that it impacts the most. And so I think making it well known that is our goal, but I don't think there's much conversation beyond that really that has impact on students. And so I think if we maintain our goal as being an impact on students, that does not impact our students.
All right, so it's tied. We don't have a 5th vote, so we don't have a consensus, so it will not.
President, and I can respect both Board Member Hui and Board Member Lofthouse comments on that. I don't know. I feel some kind of way because, like, when I go visit schools and I see these kids actually, go through their grades and everything, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be there. No, I can't be there. You know what I mean? So, for me, it was kind of personal, but I'm willing to put that aside and, just move along with it.
Well, I think at the very least, staff, again, has been reminded that the board would really like to be able to attend all of our comprehensive high schools. And if they could find a way to make that happen, they might get a box of candy or something. So. All right. And then the second item that I was wondering if the board would have an interest in having agendized. I'd be interested in exploring the possibility of retaining a value engineering consultant for our construction projects. As we discussed in a recent prior board meeting, we are going to run out of bond funds. We'll be lucky if we're going to be able to build half of the schools that the bonds were designated to build. And we have some very expensive schools being built. And if there's a way that we could have an independent, outside value engineering consultant to work with the architects, work with the district, and perhaps identifying ways that, we could do things more affordable and potentially save, some millions of dollars. We could perhaps stretch those bond funds into another couple of schools rather than having to go out to the taxpayers early for another bond to build schools that we weren't able to build with the first bond. I'd love to have that conversation at a future board meeting, have staff present the pros, cons of such a thing, what it would cost, what the potential benefits or what the detriments potentially would be.
Yeah, I'm for that. Sounds great.
I guess it's fine. I struggle again because I feel like we have staff that their responsibility is facilities, and that is not my area of expertise. And also when looking at budget items, I don't think that hiring outside consultant agencies is something that's within budget. And that's a long-term commitment. That's not just a one-time come in and check this out. So I don't think we're in the right budget mindset to be able to bring in outside consultants. I think that we do our very best, given that building schools is extremely expensive, and that is unfortunately out of our control. And so, again, sticking to that impact on students right now, I'd rather see our money be spent to support our students.
So would that be a no or
That would
yes?
be a no.
Okay. Board.
Concur, that would be a no for me.
All right. I'll bring this one's actually very important to me. I'll bring it up at the next board meeting and see if we have a third vote. All right. I would suggest if we could.
I'm actually not sure if that's how that works. If it's like, I don't know.
We just need.
I'm going to have to,
we need 3 votes.
well, but the other one was tie also. So in that consideration, if it has to be the same all the way around. So if just not getting the answer you wanted out of the 4 of us right now,
all we need is 3 pursuant to our.
But currently our board has 4.
Right.
So the first vote was a tie.
Right.
And it went towards the no. And then the second one was also a tie, and you said that you'll bring it up again.
Correct.
Which I don't think, because I think we just voted on that. I think it's going to have to go to somebody that can find out the rule on that, but.
Well, we can do that, but I'm probably going to bring it back regardless until someone tells me I can't. Because if we can pay, $50,000 but save $5 million, it benefits the students. So.
We can check on our Robert's Rules of Order on that point.
Okay.
For the next meeting.
But I think just to clarify, these aren't official votes. It's just looking for board
right.
consensus.
Right. We, in order to have consensus, we need to have 3. We've agreed that means we need to have 3 individuals to request it to be on an agenda item. We don't have 3. We are tied, so.
So I just need clarification. So if I were to bring something up, and let's say we had a full board and I was outvoted 3-2, does that mean I get to say, okay, well, I'm going to bring it back again and probably grind on and try to, work it out with one of the board members to, kind of get them on my side? I don't know. Or what if we're in that other situation where we have a board member not here and it doesn't go through? It's like, okay, we'll wait for that other board member to come back when the vote has already been established. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a tied vote. It's different than if it was a 3-2 vote. That's been decided. If it's a tie vote, no action has been taken because it's tied.
I'm just requesting that that rule is followed up with, because it's one way or the other, and I'm seeing it go both ways for this, for just this conversation. So I'm just requesting that we follow the rules of that. Because to me, what I foresee coming is a Brown Act violation, because she's not here to hear this conversation. So for her to come back and then make a vote, the thought would be that a conversation went off the cuff and an unscheduled meeting about this situation is brought up to gain a vote one way or the other.
How can it be a Brown Act violation when we're in a public meeting?
Ms. Lorette is not here.
It's still a public meeting.
Okay.
I think another way to consider the discussion around this topic is the request that we made after the last board meeting to have a study session in August to talk about our bond programs and the future of our bond programs. And you know, this came up at the last meeting too, I think, with Ms. Laird's comments of, you know, when will we be able to start? Well, will we have enough dollars to fund all the schools that are needed? And the obvious answer was no, but how long is it before we need to go out for a bond? And, you know, part of the I think your request, Mr. Reed, could possibly be addressed during that study session. It's more of a study session to explore and get curious about these questions and, you know, to start putting some timelines into place if the board is going to take action on future bond programs. But I would assume that question might come up again at that point. So I probably wouldn't address it out of context, but perhaps it could be addressed at that study session.
Yeah, that would be perfect as well, yeah. It was just an article I recently read about this type of role, and I thought it made a lot of sense, so. All right, well, let's, I guess, Superintendent, if you can find out if that can be raised again, just out of curiosity, and then if it could be included in the study session, I mean, since it's relevant, that would be fine as well.
Okay.
All right. So that takes us to, let's see here. All right, recess to closed session. We did not get through everything we needed to get through in closed session, so we do have to return to closed session. As we have been doing in the past, obviously, Superintendent, you can release any or all the staff that need to be let go. So I suspect this might take a little while. I don't think it's going to be in and out. But when we come back out of closed session, there won't be anything to report. We will probably just immediately gavel out within 15, 20 seconds of coming back into open session.
Cabinet is welcome to leave, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. We are in recess.
Recording stopped.
All right, we're back from our second closed session. That takes us to reporting out of closed session. Superintendent?
No action to report out of closed session, Mr. Reed.
All right, that takes us to adjournment. We will adjourn by unanimous consent unless there's any objections. Is there any objections? All right, we are adjourned.